Good afternoon, dear colleagues. The session that was adjourned on the 17th of February 2022 is now reopened. The minutes and the texts adopted of the sittings of the 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th of February 2022 are available. I ask now whether there are any comments, but I see that there are not, so that means that the minutes have been approved. Number of announcements. The ID and ECR groups have notified the President of decisions relating to changes to appointments within committees and delegations. These decisions will be set out in the minutes of today's sitting and shall take effect on the date of this announcement. We now come to the order of business. The final draft agenda, as adopted by the Conference of Presidents on the 24th of February, pursuant to the Rule 157, has been distributed. Following consultations with the political groups, I wish to put to the House the following proposal for changes to the final draft agenda. And that means today, the debate on Russian aggression against Ukraine will be held in the format of European Council and Commission statements and will be extended until 3:30 this afternoon. The announcement of results of the first voting session will be held at 3 p.m. The second voting session will then start at 3:30 and end at 4:15. And finally, the announcement of the results of the second voting session will be held at 5:15. I see that there are no objections, and therefore I declare that this change has been approved and the agenda is therefore deemed adopted and the order of business is thus established. I will now move to today's first voting session. We will vote on the files as indicated on the agenda. The voting session will be open from noon until 12:45. The same voting method will be used as during the last part sessions, and all votes will be held by roll call. Explanations of votes may be submitted in writing, and explanations of votes containing a maximum of 400 words will be accepted. So thereby I declare the voting session open. You have until 12:45 to vote. The debate then will start at 12:30, dear colleagues, with the European Council and Commission statements on Russian aggression against Ukraine, and the results of the votes will be announced at 3 p.m. I encourage you to stay in the room and also call your colleagues to join us here. We will, as you know, not only have a very strong presence of Ukrainian citizens and their representatives in our gallery, but also interventions by President Zelensky and the Speaker of the Parliament of Ukraine, of the Rada, President Stefanchuk. I look forward to seeing you at 12:30. Dear colleagues, can I ask you to take a seat?
Use the hammer.
Dear colleagues, can I ask you to take a seat, please? Please take a seat, dear colleagues. Once again, can I please ask you to take a seat? This is a very important moment for the Parliament. Good afternoon. We are here today in the dark shadow cast by Putin's war. A war we did not provoke, a war we did not start. An outrageous invasion of a sovereign, independent state. On behalf of the European Parliament, I condemn the Russian military aggression against Ukraine in the strongest possible terms and express my solidarity with all those suffering and all those killed. The message from Europe is clear. We will stand up. We will not look away when those fighting in the streets for our values face down Putin's massive war machine. We will support the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction and investigation of war crimes in Ukraine. We will hold him accountable, just as we will hold Lukashenko. We are facing an existential threat to the Europe we know, the Europe so many have given so much for. And this is why, on this important day, I am pleased to announce that President Zelensky will address us shortly, followed by Speaker Ruslan Stefanchuk, the chair of the Rada of Ukraine. And allow me also to have a special welcome to the Ambassador of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people present in the plenary today. Mr. President, thank you for showing the world what it means to stand up. Thank you for reminding us about the dangers of complacency. Everyday acts of extraordinary heroism by Ukrainians inspire us all. Defence forces and citizens making the ultimate sacrifice to delay a column of tanks. Senior citizens standing up to face down Russian troops with nothing but pride and sunflowers as their weapon. Brave women forced to give birth in metro stations next to their Kalashnikovs. They showed the world that our way of life is worth defending. It is worth a cost. All those who remember living under occupation will attest to that. All those standing up in Belarus, all those looking to us in Moldova, in Georgia. It is worth it for us, for the next generation, for all those in Ukraine and around the world who believe in Europe and in our way, and for all those who want to be free. Our European response was on display over the last very painful days. This must be our whatever it takes moment. Neighbouring states have accepted hundreds of thousands of fleeing Ukrainians. Europeans sheltered Ukrainians in their homes. We have implemented a series of unprecedented, massive sanctions. We have gone further and will provide much-needed weapons to Ukraine. We have declared that Russian aircraft and oligarchs' private jets are no longer welcome in our open skies. We have moved for Russia to be disconnected from the SWIFT system. We have banned Kremlin propaganda tools. European citizens, organisations, businesses, sports have taken a clear and forceful stand, underlining that they will not deal with or welcome an aggressor. And Europe stands ready to go further still. We recognise Ukraine's European perspective. And as our resolution clearly states, we welcome, Mr. President, Ukraine's application for candidate status, and we will work towards that goal, because we will. Because we will and we must face the future together. Mr. President, we stand with you in your fight for survival in this dark moment in our history. When you look to this European Parliament, you will always find an ally, a space to address Europe and the world, and always, always a friend. This European Parliament has a long, proud history of being a thorn in the side of autocrats. And in this spirit, I will seek a ban on any representatives of the Kremlin from entering European Parliament premises, because aggressors and warmongers have no place in the House of Democracy. Dear President, dear members, let me finish out by setting out 4 important principles for our future. First of all, Europe can no longer remain reliant on Kremlin gas. We need to redouble our efforts to diversify our energy systems towards a Europe that is no longer at the behest of autocrats, that will put our energy security on stronger footing. Secondly, Europe can no longer welcome Kremlin cash and pretend that there are no strings attached. Putin's oligarchs and those who bankroll him should no longer be able to use their purchasing power to hide behind a veneer of respectability in our cities, in our communities, or in our sports clubs. Their super yachts should find no harbour in our Europe, and we can no longer sell passports to Putin's friends, allowing them to circumvent our security. No more. Thirdly, investment in our defence
Дякую. Шановні присутні, ви знаєте, я останні дні не знаю, як правильно всіх вітати, тому що я не можу казати «добрий ранок» або казати «доброго дня» чи «добрий вечір». І не можу, і це абсолютно правда, тому що щоденно для когось цей день точно не добрий, щоденно для когось цей вечір останній. Я говорю сьогодні і зараз про своїх громадян України, які захищають ціною свого життя, захищають цінності, захищають свободу. Я дуже радий, що те, що я зараз побачив тут, і те, що я чув, я радий, цей настрій,
to sense this mood,
такий об'єднуючий. Я радий, що ми об'єднали сьогодні всіх вас, країн Європейського Союзу, але я не знав, що такою ціною. І це трагедія для мене, трагедія для кожного українця, трагедія для нашої держави. Така висока ціна. Дуже висока ціна. Тисячі загиблих людей.
Thousands of people who were killed. Two revolutions, one war, and 5 days of full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation.
Ви знаєте,
You know,
я не говорю, не читаю папірці, тому що папірці в житті моєї держави закінчились. Все це реальність.
In the life of my country is ending.
Загиблі люди,
Now we're dealing with reality. We're dealing with killed people, real life, you know.
І ви знаєте,
And you know,
я вважаю,
I
що
believe that
ми віддаємо сьогодні
today
за цінності, за права, за свободу, просто за бажання бути рівними, такими самими, як ви. Як кожна людина, ми віддаємо наших найкращих людей, найміцніших, найсильніших
the strongest ones, the most valueless ones. Ukrainians are incredible.
Ми дуже часто любимо говорити,
Very
що
often we love to say
ми всіх переможемо.
that we will win over everyone.
І я дуже радий, що зараз ви вже про це не тільки говорите,
That you are not only
а
talking about
бачите.
it, but you can see that.
І ми точно всіх переможемо.
And we will overcome
А
everyone.
я впевнений в
And I'm
цьому.
sure, I'm convinced,
Є такий вираз
there is an expression,
український
Ukrainian
вибір Європи.
choice,
Те, чого
European
ми
choice of
прагнули, і
Ukraine.
до чого йшли,
That's
і
what we're
йдемо.
striving for, and that's what we're going to,
Я б дуже
and we
хотів, щоб
went
сьогодні
to.
звучав
So
у
I would
вас
like
там,
to
від
hear
вас до
that
нас,
from you to us,
вибір
we could hear
Європою вже в Україні. У мене
the
є пару
Ukrainian
хвилин спілкуватися з
choice
вами,
for
тому
Europe from
що
you. I have
такі невеличкі у нас перерви через постійні обстріли і ракетні удари.
some time off here because we have breaks between the
Ранок був
missile
трагічним
strikes and
для всіх нас.
bombardments. And this morning was a very
Дві
tragic
ракети
one for us.
по Харкову.
2 cruise missiles hit Kharkiv,
Місто, яке
the
біля
city,
кордонів з
which
Російською
is located
Федерацією.
to the
Там
borders of
завжди
the
було
Russian
дуже
Federation.
багато
There were always
росіяни, завжди
many
вони
Russians there,
дружили, були
and
дуже
they're
теплі
always
відносини.
friendly. There were
Там
warm
більше
relations
20
there.
вузів. Там
More than
це
20
є
universities are there.
місто, де
It's the
найбільша
city
кількість
that has the
університетів в нашій
largest number of
країні.
universities in our country.
Молодь яскрава,
The youth is
розумна,
bright, smart there.
яка завжди
The
збирається
people who gathered there all the time
збиралась
and was
на всі
gathering there all the time
свята
for
на
celebrating all
найбільшій площі в нашій
celebrations.
державі.
And the largest square in our
Площа
country,
Свободи.
the Freedom Square.
І це найбільша площа
And this is
в
the
Європі.
largest
І це є
square in
правда.
Europe,
Ця
and that's
площа
true.
Свободи.
This is
Уявіть
called
собі,
the Freedom
зранку
Square. Can you imagine
дві
this morning
крилаті
2 cruise
ракети у
missiles
площу Свободи.
hit this
Десятки
Freedom
жертв.
Square? Dozens of
Ось
killed
така ціна свободи.
ones. This is the price of freedom.
Ми боремося
We are fighting
просто за свою землю
just for our
і за
land
свою свободу. І
and for our
повірте мені,
freedom.
Незважаючи на те, що зараз заблоковані усі великі міста нашої
That all
держави,
large cities of our country are now
ніхто
blocked.
в нашу свободу і
Nobody
в державу не зайде.
is going to
Повірте мені,
enter and intervene with
кожна
our freedom
площа
and country. And believe you me,
сьогодення,
every
сьогоднішнього
square
дня, як би вона не
today, no
називалась,
matter what it's
вона
called,
буде називатися
going to be called
площею свободи.
today,
В
Freedom
кожному
Square,
місті нашої
in
держави.
every city of our country.
Ніхто не зламає нас.
Nobody is going to break
Ми
us.
сильні,
We're
ми
strong.
українці.
We're
У
Ukrainians.
нас є, ви знаєте, бажання, щоб
We
наші
have a
діти
desire to see our children
жили. Мені здається, що це
alive.
чесно.
I think it's a
Вчора
fair
16 дітей
Yesterday,
загинуло.
16 children were killed.
І знов президент Путін скаже, що
Again
це
and again, President
якась там
Putin is going
операція,
to say
і ми
that is some
б'ємо
kind of
по
operation and
військовій
we are
інфраструктурі,
hitting a military
де наші
infrastructure.
діти, на яких вони
Where are
військових
our
заводах
children? What kind
працюють,
of
на
military
яких
factories
ракетах
do they
вони, може вони в
work
танках
at?
їздять,
What tanks
16
are they
дітей
going
ти вбив.
with? Or launching cruise missiles. He killed 16 people just yesterday.
Шановні,
Dear,
у нас дуже мотивований народ.
our people are very much motivated, very much
Ми
so.
боремось
We are fighting
за наші права,
for our rights,
свободу,
for our freedoms,
за життя.
for life,
А
for our
зараз
life.
ми
And
боремося
now
за виживання.
we're fighting for
І це
survival.
найголовніша наша мотивація.
And this is the highest of our
Ми
motivation.
боремося
But
і за
we
те,
are
щоб бути
fighting
рівноправними
also
членами
to be
Європи.
equal members of Europe.
І я вважаю,
I
що
believe that
сьогодні
today
ми всім показуємо, що ми такі є.
are showing everybody that's exactly what we
Європейський
are.
Союз
The European
буде
Union
точно міцніший.
is going to be much stronger with us, so that's for sure.
Без вас
Without you,
Україна
Ukraine
буде самотня.
is going to be lonely, lonesome.
Ми довели свою
We
силу,
have proven our
довели,
strength.
що
We
ми
have proven
як
that
мінімум
as at a minimum,
такі самі, як
we
ви.
are exactly the same as you
Доведіть,
are.
що ви
So
разом з
do
нами.
prove that you are with
Доведіть,
us.
що ви нас
Do prove
не
that
відпускаєте.
you will not let us go.
Доведіть, що ви
Do prove
дійсно
that you indeed
європейці.
are
І
Europeans.
тоді
And then
життя переможе смерть,
life will
а світ
win over death, and light will win over darkness. Glory be to Ukraine.
Thank you very much for your strong message, President, for your bravery and for your conviction. I will now give the floor to the Speaker of the Ukraine Parliament, Ruslan Stefanchuk, for his intervention.
Шановні депутати та депутатки Європейського парламенту, шановна пані голово, насамперед, дякую за ту можливість, що я можу сьогодні виступити перед Європейським парламентом. Але виступити я хочу не один. За мною ви бачите ті кадри, які щоденно бачимо я Україну. Ви знаєте, 8 років тому український народ сказав категоричний ні російській навалі і спробі змінити подвічний шлях України додому. Додому до своєї європейської нації, до об'єднаного Європейського Союзу. До, мабуть, найбільш успішного об'єднавчого процесу, який демонструвався впродовж всіх цих років. Натомість наше право розвиватися, наше право бути демократичною державою, яка сама обирає свій шлях, воно було сплюндровано країною, яка не поважає міжнародне право, яка не поважає міжнародні принципи, яка нехтує суверенітетом і державною цілісністю будь-якої держави в світі. І результат сьогодні ви бачите. Велика кількість загиблих, велика кількість постраждалих. Сьогодні агресор, як вже було сказано, атакував місто Харків. Сьогодні постійно йде атака на інші міста моєї країни. Ви знаєте, мені здається, що в історії Європи настав черговий переломний момент. Історія Європи твориться саме сьогодні. І вона напряму залежить від того, як уся об'єднана європейська спільнота відреагує на цей виклик дикості, варварства і нецивілізації. Шановні депутати, я щиро вдячний, знаю, що у вас сьогодні буде розглядатися низка серйозних економічних санкцій, які ви будете покладати на державу-агресора. Але я хотів би, щоб ви всі усвідомлювали, що сьогодні Україна захищає кордон цивілізованого світу. І якщо, не дай Бог, впаде Україна, ніхто не знає, де зупиниться російська армія. Чи тиждень тому я теж не знав. Я в офіційному костюмі, в краватці, проводив пленарні засідання парламенту України. Ми приймали важливі реформаторські закони. А вже тільки сьогодні я 4 рази спускався у бомбосховище, тому що над столицею моєї країни, над 1500-літнім містом Києвом снують ворожі, а літаки, летять бомби, і здійснюється все, щоб зламати український дух. Але цього не буде. Тому подумайте на хвилинку, що може статися з Європою, якщо сьогодні відновиться страшна російська імперія. Чи зможе Європейський Союз сьогодні відстояти простір свободи і демократії, створені за останні десятиліття? І чи почуватися ви в безпеці? І що відчувають східноєвропейські країни, коли російські танки стануть на їхньому кордоні? На які регіони зверне свою увагу Кремль в майбутньому, розв'язавши собі руки після України? Тому хочу закликати вас думати стратегічно, підтримувати єдність Європейського Союзу, підтримувати Україну, довіряти один одному та трансатлантичним партнерам. І що саме головне, діяти, не мовчати, а зібрати усі свої зусилля і показати, що Європа сьогодні єдина, як ніколи, тому що загроза сьогодні, як ніколи. І найкращою підтримкою для народу України у ці критичні для нас дні було б реальне визнання наших європейських перспектив. Тому що членство в Європейському Союзі ще до подій 24 лютого в Україні підтримувало 67% населення України. І це наш мандат. Наш мандат спілкуватися з вами, з Європейським Союзом, тому що український народ зробив свій вибір. І тому я закликаю інституції Європейського Союзу та держави-члени Європейського Союзу підтримати надання Україні статусу країни-кандидата, що стало чітким сигналом підтримки всього українського народу. І ви знаєте, що 28 лютого президент України Володимир Зеленський підписав листа зі спільною заявою представників органів влади в Україні щодо подання заявки на членство в Європейському Союзі відповідно до статті 49 договору про Європейський Союз. Шановні колеги, сьогодні у проєкті резолюції Європейського парламенту також є низка санкцій, які ви плануєте ввести проти держави-агресора. Я також прошу підтримати їх. Тому що історія сьогодні робиться на ваших очах. І давайте разом спростуємо відомий вислів Черчилля, що ми живемо у великій події, у часи великих подій і маленьких людей. Я точно знаю, що Україна – це велика країна, і країна величних людей. Вони довели це впродовж останніх 6 днів.
We know that Ukraine has proven that this slogan during the
Давайте
last
будемо
6
гідні
days.
тих, хто прямо зараз віддає своє
Let's
життя
be worthy
за
of
європейську
those
Union.
people who are perishing right now
За
for
майбутнє
the
нашої
European
європейської
Union, for the future of our European
Ми
house.
маємо зрозуміти,
Let's
що не
understand
може бути
that there
миру в
cannot
Європі
be
без
peace
сильної України.
in Europe
І не може
without
бути
Ukraine.
цілісної Європи без України.
There could not be
Слава
integral
Україні!
Europe without
Дякую за увагу.
Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your words, for your courage and for your commitment to peace and parliamentary democracy. I give the floor now to the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, for his statement.
Madame la Présidente du Parlement européen, Madame la Présidente de la Commission européenne, Monsieur le Haut représentant, Mesdames et Messieurs les parlementaires, très cher Président ukrainien, cher Volodymyr Zelensky, très cher Président du Parlement ukrainien, les mots que vous avez exprimés transpercent nos âmes et nos cœurs et nous font mesurer la gravité et le sérieux du moment. Nous font mesurer la gravité et le sérieux de l'enjeu, la gravité et le sérieux des décisions que nous allons devoir prendre ensemble. Parce que, à nouveau, le sang et la guerre sont sur le sol européen. 5 days ago, Vladimir Putin launched a brutal, massive invasion of Ukraine, an unjustified and unprovoked war based on despicable lies, and he did it only for one reason. Because you, dear Volodymyr Zelensky, you, dear people of Ukraine, in Maidan, you made the choice of freedom, democracy, and rule of law. And dear colleagues, it's not only Ukraine that's under attack. International law, rules-based international order, democracy, human dignity are also under attack. This is geopolitical terrorism, pure and simple. We must support Ukraine, and we are supporting Ukraine. We must protect peace, we must protect democracy and international law. And ladies and gentlemen, our transatlantic alliance is strong, united, perfectly coordinated, and we are also working closely with the members of the G7 and with the United Nations, and more countries are engaging in an anti-war coalition along with people from around the world with one common message. Russia, stop the war, go home, let's talk. We are putting maximum pressure on Russia and its leaders. We are stepping up to support Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. I salute with all of you President Zelensky and the brave people of Ukraine for their courage and composure. And it's also our duty to rise to this historic moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we promised together that we would react quickly, that the consequences for Russia would be massive and severe, and our actions have matched our words. We have responded with massive and unprecedented sanctions. We imposed sanctions on political and military leaders, on oligarchs, on Vladimir Putin, on Sergei Lavrov. We are also taking powerful measures to severely restrict the use of the foreign currency reserve of the Russian Central Bank. We are excluding key Russian banks from the SWIFT system. And we are also imposing severe sanctions on key sectors of Russia's economy. Mais mesdames et messieurs, nous devons être honnêtes et francs les uns par rapport aux autres. Ces sanctions signifieront aussi un coût pour nous-mêmes. Et ce coût pour nous-mêmes, nous devons l'assumer. Nous devons l'assumer parce que ce qui est en jeu, ce sont nos valeurs, nos convictions et notre avenir commun. Alors, chers collègues, bien sûr, supporter l'Ukraine, c'est mobiliser des moyens financiers, nous le faisons, nous allons continuer à le faire et nous appelons à une conférence internationale de donateurs. C'est bien sûr être engagé spécialement avec nos États membres aux frontières directes qui vont être confrontés, et le sont déjà, à des personnes qui fuient la guerre et cherchent un refuge, un havre de sécurité. Ce sera l'honneur et la dignité de l'Europe de montrer notre solidarité vis-à-vis des Ukrainiens et vis-à-vis de l'ensemble de ceux qui sont mobilisés pour assumer cette responsabilité. Mais bien entendu, la solidarité, elle va aussi se manifester à travers des moyens militaires, défensifs, qui sont et qui vont être délivrés. Et c'est ainsi que ce samedi matin, en parfaite coordination avec le haut représentant, nous avons décidé d'activer la facilité paix avec le soutien des États membres pour soutenir ces moyens militaires défensifs qui sont tellement nécessaires pour soutenir les efforts de résistance du peuple ukrainien. Mesdames et messieurs, le président Zelensky, il y a quelques instants, nous a regardé dans les yeux, il nous a ouvert son cœur et a évoqué cette annonce qui nous a été adressée de manière maintenant officielle, la demande de reconnaissance par l'Union européenne du statut de candidat de l'Ukraine. Il va nous appartenir, à nous, Européens, d'être aussi à la hauteur du moment. Et bien sûr, nous savons que ce sujet est un sujet difficile parce qu'il touche à l'élargissement, et nous savons qu'il y a au sein de l'Union européenne des opinions différentes qui peuvent parfois être nuancées sur ce sujet-là. Il appartiendra à la Commission européenne d'émettre un avis au départ duquel le Conseil n'échappera pas à ses responsabilités. Le Conseil devra analyser sérieusement la demande symbolique, politique, forte et je le crois légitime qui a été exprimée, et il conviendra alors de donner l'orientation et de faire le choix qui sera le choix juste, avec sang-froid, avec détermination, face à cette requête qui est exprimée aujourd'hui, les yeux dans les yeux, et avec une émotion qui nous touche chacune et chacun. Mesdames et messieurs, je voudrais clôturer ces quelques mots en vous indiquant que certainement, lorsque cette guerre a été déclenchée, Vladimir Poutine a imaginé qu'il briserait l'unité européenne, et il s'est trompé. Probablement, il a pensé qu'il ferait face à l'inaction, à la passivité, à la recherche des excuses pour ne pas décider et il s'est trompé. Lorsqu'il a lancé cette action, probablement il a imaginé qu'en quelques instants, il prendrait la maîtrise de l'Ukraine. Il s'est trompé parce que le peuple ukrainien, avec bravoure et courage, résiste. Probablement il a imaginé qu'en portant cette attaque, il porterait aussi un coup sévère, peut-être même un coup fatal à ce que nous incarnons, la démocratie, la liberté, l'état de droit. Faisons en sorte que là aussi, il se trompe. Et en étant devant vous aujourd'hui, je pense à ces mots en 1961, et je veux le citer, du général de Gaulle qui disait « Tout recul a pour effet de surexciter l'agresseur, de le pousser à redoubler sa pression et finalement facilite son assaut. Au total, les puissances occidentales n'ont pas de meilleur moyen de servir la paix du monde que rester droit et ferme. C'est exactement la posture du président Volodymyr Zelensky. C'est aussi la posture qui nous appartient à nous d'adopter, être droit et ferme et voir dans le visage, dans les yeux, dans la voix de Volodymyr Zelensky, la voix, le visage et la lumière de la liberté, de l'espoir, de la sécurité, de la stabilité et des valeurs européennes. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Michel. I now give the floor to the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, for his statement.
Monsieur le Président du Conseil européen, Madame la Présidente du Parlement européen, Madame la Présidente de la Commission, Président Zelensky, Président du Parlement ukrainien, dear members of the European Parliament, I will try to share with you my thoughts on the meaning of the tragic events that we are living and the provisional lessons that we can draw from them, especially for the common security and defence policy, which I had the honour to try to develop, and it remains an intergovernmental policy, a policy which is yet in the hands of the member states, but cannot be implemented efficiently without the strong cooperation of the Commission competences. I think this is the moment in which the geopolitical Europe is being born. Ça, c'est l'acte de naissance de l'Europe géopolitique. Le moment où nous prenons conscience des défis auxquels nous faisons face, le moment où l'Europe doit faire face à ses responsabilités, le moment où nous prenons conscience que, pour la première fois depuis la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, un pays invade un autre.
Second World War, we are seeing one country invade another. This is a country with nuclear weapons. This is part of its intimidation tactics.
Ça me fait malade de penser à l'analogie historique
que cet événement when I think about the historical analogies and how we can look back at the events at the start of the Second World War.
It is really the return of tragedy to which Europe is being confronted today. The return of tragedy, far from frightening us, should galvanize us. First, because it believes the idea that the European project had lost its momentum because the horizon of the war has been faded. Unfortunately not. This reminds us that the evil, the tragedy and the war never fade away. And it's about the relationship with war, with the use of force, with the violence, who have been debating here. We have been debating for years to find out can Europe can counter it. And this is why in the recent years we have talked more about defense issues than in the past, and we have begun to set up joint military programs. Well, that's why the European Parliament itself has voted to set this European Defence Fund And the member states has created this European peace facility that now we are mobilizing in order to provide arms to Ukraine. The European Council in the next weeks will adopt the strategic compass. And with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, we must amplify our reflection, adjust our means, and anticipate our responses. Because one of the lessons that we have to learn from the invasion of Ukraine is that more than ever, Europe must to think strategically about itself, its environment, and the world. This is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. Europe must amplify its reflection on security issues, and the European Parliament has had an important role to play in this regard. We need to think about the instrument of coercion, retaliation, and counterattack in the face of reckless adversaries, because all we need to understand is that to make peace, we need to be two. But to make war is enough to be one. This is exactly what Mr. Putin is telling us. And that's why we have to increase our deterrent capacity a lot. We need to increase our deterrence capacity in order to prevent war. And it's clear that our deterrent has not been strong enough to stop Mr. Putin's aggression. But since this aggression has started, we have reacted in the last few days in a way that Mr. Putin didn't expect. And we are showing him that we will never sacrifice our freedom and the freedom of others on the altar of our well-being and prosperity. Being president of this parliament in 2007, I had the opportunity to tell to Mr. Putin eye to eyes on the aftermath of the killing of a journalist, Anna Politkovskaya. I told him, we are not going to change human rights by your gas. And this is the moment to repeat and to act on that. We will not share, we will not abandon the defense of our human rights and freedom, because we are more or less dependent on Russia. And we have to start working quickly, as the Commission has proposed, in order to cancel this dependency. Last Saturday, after having held another Foreign Affairs Council and attending the debate of the European Union Council, I was talking with you, President Michel, and you told me, are we doing everything we can? Is there something more than we can do? Is that enough? Are we so powerless? And you told me, think, do, act. We have to push member states in order to adopt decisions on SWIFT and to take Russia out of the financial system. Think about how can we arm Ukraine, not country by country, one after all, in an uncoordinated manner. And you encouraged me to talk with member states again. In few hours, we agreed on using this European peace facility in order to bring financial support and coordinate member states on arming Ukrainian army and people. In less than 24 hours, another taboo had fallen. And the President of the Commission immediately, showing a strong leadership, started working in order to get an agreement with our international partners in order to make possible to switch off Russia from the financial system. And you know what? Now, half of the reserves of the Central Bank of Russia are completely out of their control. They are frozen. Do you imagine? This is the coercion capacity. 3 days ago, it was impossible, and now it's possible, and they start feeling the consequences in terms of inflation and the fall of their currency. Yes, we have capacities. We have mobilized these capacities, and we have to continue doing so. Putting together the capacities of the member states and the European Union. I want to remember you that the European Peace Facility is not part of the budget that you vote. It's another budget. It's an intergovernmental fund managed by the member states, because we claim that we, European Union, were a peaceful force and we cannot provide arms to anyone else. Yes, we can. Yes, we have done. On the next budget, think about it. When you vote the next budget, use your budgetary capacity. You have the budgetary capacity of this institution to put the ways and means in order to face the next crisis and the next Russian aggression. We are also working. We are working in
the international arena to try and build a coalition to condemn Russia within the UN. They had no votes in favour and only abstentions. There were countries traditionally allied to Russia that did not vote in favour of them, they abstained. And so now we need to build an international coalition. So in the next UN General Assembly, it will be the entire world that will condemn this aggressor. Nobody can look the other way. There is no justification for a powerful country attacking its weaker neighbour. You cannot speak of pacifism. You cannot have the aggressor and the attacker on the same footing. We have to be by their side. We have used our coercitive capacity, not necessarily using weapons. When we talk about Europe being a hard power, people think only in military power, but there are other ways to exert hard power. Our coercive capacity is a way of influencing another's behaviour, and this is not just done by weapons, it has been done by the European Commission and extraordinarily successful measures as put in place by the Commission. So thank you, President von der Leyen. We're not talking about mobilising missiles, but these sanctions can have a hugely important effect on a country. They will not allow Russia to spend the money that we have spent on their gas to fund this war. That is, ladies and gentlemen, I believe the most important lesson that we can draw from these tragic circumstances. We cannot simply call for the rule of law and hope that our trading and commercial relationships will help move everybody towards a more democratic path. The forces of evil, the forces that want to use physical violence as a way to resolve conflict, are still there. And against these types of forces, we have to show a much stronger capacity to act. We need to be more consistent. We need to be more united than we have been up to now. We have done a lot. I think we have surprised the world. I think we have surprised Putin by our rapid capacity to act, and we must continue along this path. This moment here in Parliament, with your applause, that shows us that the EU institutions must continue on this path that we have started. This is the moment that Europeans understand they live in a dangerous world. And in order to confront that, we must have a stronger union. The pandemic has opened the door to innovative actions. It has helped us move along the path to greater unity when facing this virus. And now this tragic moment should give us fresh impetus to be ever more united and to counter these actions that threaten human life, security, and the prosperity of all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, High Representative. I now give the floor to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, for her statement.
Madam President of the European Parliament, Mr. President of the Council, High Representative, Mr. President of the Ukraine, dear Volodymyr, Mr. Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, my honourable members, War has returned to Europe. Almost 30 years after the Balkan Wars and over half a century after Soviet troops marched into Prague and Budapest, civil defense sirens again went off in the heart of a European capital. Thousands of people fleeing from bombs camped in underground stations, holding hands, crying silently, trying to cheer each other up. Cars lined up towards Ukrainian western borders. And when many of them ran out of fuel, people picked up their children and their backpacks and marched for tens of kilometers towards our union. They sought refuge inside our borders because their country wasn't safe any longer. Because inside Ukraine, a gruesome death count has begun. Men, women, children are dying once again because a foreign leader, President Putin, decided that their country, Ukraine, has no right to exist. And we will never, ever let that happen and never, ever accept that. Honourable members, this is a moment of truth for Europe. And let me quote the editorial of one Ukrainian newspaper, the Kyiv Independent, published just hours before the invasion began, and I quote, "This is not just about Ukraine. It's a clash of two worlds, two polar set of values." End of quote. They are so right. This is a clash between the rule of law and the rule of the gun, between democracies and autocracies, between a rules-based order and a world of naked aggression. How we respond today to what Russia is doing will determine the future of the international system. The destiny of Ukraine is at stake, but our own fate also lies in the balance. We must show the power that lies in our democracies. We must show the power of people that choose their independent path freely and democratically. This is our show of force. And today, a union of almost 500 million people has mobilized for Ukraine. The people of Europe are demonstrating in front of Russian embassies all across our union. Many of them have opened their homes to Ukrainians fleeing from Putin's bombs. And let me thank especially Poland, Romania, Slovakia and Hungary for welcoming these women, men and children. Europe will be there for them, not only in the first days, but also in the weeks and months to come. That must be our promise altogether. And this is why we are proposing to activate the temporary protection mechanism to provide them with a secure status and access to schools, medical care and work. They deserve it. We need to do that now. And we know this is only the beginning. More Ukrainians will need our protection and solidarity. We are and we will be there for them. Our union is showing a unity of purpose that makes me proud. At the speed of light, the European Union has adopted 3 waves of heavy sanctions against Russia's financial system, its high-tech industries and its corrupt elite. And this is the largest sanctions package in our union's history. We do not take these measures lightly, but we feel we had to act. These sanctions will take a heavy toll on the Russian economy and on the Kremlin. We are disconnecting key Russian banks from the SWIFT network. We also banned the transaction of Russia's central bank, the single most important financial institution in Russia, and this paralyzes billions of foreign reserves, turning off the tap on Russia's and Putin's war. We have to end this financing of his war. And second, we target important sectors of the Russian economy. We are making it impossible for Russia to upgrade its oil refineries, to repair and modernize its air fleet, and to access many important technologies it needs to build a prosperous future. We've closed our skies to Russian aircraft, including the private jets of oligarchs. And make no mistake, we will freeze their other assets as well, be it yachts or fancy cars or luxury prosperities. We'll freeze that all together. And thirdly, in another unprecedented step, we're suspending the licenses of the Kremlin's propaganda machine. The state-owned Russia Today and Sputnik and all of their subsidiaries will no longer be able to spread their lies to justify Putin's war and to divide our union. And these are unprecedented actions by the European Union and our partners in response of an unprecedented aggression by Russia. Each one of these steps has been closely coordinated with our partners and allies. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada and Norway, but also, for example, Japan, South Korea and Australia. All of these days you see that more than 30 countries representing well over half of the world's economy have also announced sanctions and export controls on Russia. And if Putin was seeking to divide the European Union, to weaken NATO and to break the international community, he has achieved exactly the opposite. We are more united than ever, and we will stand up in this war. That is for clear that we will overcome and we will prevail. We are united and we stay united. Honourable members, I am well aware that these sanctions will come at a cost for our economy too. I know this, and I want to speak honestly to the people of Europe. We have endured 2 years of pandemic, and we all wished that we could focus on our economic and social recovery. But I believe the people of Europe understand very well that we must stand up against this cruel aggression. Yes, protecting our liberty comes at a price, but this is a defining moment, and this is the cost we are willing to pay, because freedom is priceless, honourable members. This is our principle. Freedom is priceless. Our investments today will make us more independent tomorrow. And I'm thinking first and foremost about our energy security. We simply cannot rely so much on a supplier that explicitly threatens us. And this is why we reached out to other global suppliers, and they responded. Norway is stepping up. In January, we had the record supply of LNG gas. We're building new LNG terminals and working on interconnectors. But in the long run, it is our switch to renewables and hydrogen that will make us truly independent. We have to accelerate the green transition, because every kilowatt hour of electricity Europe generates from solar, wind, hydropower or biomass reduces our dependency on Russian gas and other energy sources. This is a strategic investment. And my honourable members, this is a strategic investment because on top, less dependency on Russian gas and other fossil fuel sources also means less money for the Kremlin's war chest. This is also a truth. We are resolute. Europe can rise up to the challenge. The same is true on defence. European security and defence has evolved more in the last 6 days than in the last 2 decades. Most member states have promised deliveries of military equipment to Ukraine. Germany announced that it will meet the 2% goal of NATO as soon as possible. And our union, for the first time ever, is using the European budget to purchase and deliver military equipment to a country that is under attack. 500 million euros for the European Peace Facility to support Ukraine's defence. As a first batch, we will now also match this by at least €500 million from the EU budget to deal with the humanitarian consequences of this tragic war, both in the country and for the refugees. Honourable members, this is a watershed moment for our Union. We cannot take our security and the protection of people for granted. We have to stand up for it. We have to invest in it. We have to carry our fair share of the responsibility. And this crisis is changing Europe. But Russia has also reached a crossroad. The actions of the Kremlin are severely damaging the long-term interests of Russia and its people. More and more Russians understand this as well. They are marching for peace and freedom. And how does the Kremlin respond to this? By arresting thousands of them. But ultimately, the longing for peace and freedom cannot be silenced. There is another Russia besides Putin's tanks, and we extend our hand of friendship to this other Russia. Be assured they have our support. Honourable members, in these days, independent Ukraine is facing its darkest hour. At the same time, the Ukrainian people are holding up the torch of freedom for all of us. They are showing immense courage. They are defending their lives. But they are also fighting for universal values, and they are willing to die for them. President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people are a true inspiration. And when we last spoke, he told me again about his people's dream to join our union. Today, the European Union and Ukraine are already closer than ever before. There is still a long path ahead. We have to end this war, and we should talk about the next steps. But I am sure nobody in this hemicycle can doubt that a people that stands up so bravely for our European values belongs in our European family. And therefore, honourable members, I say, long live Europe and long live a free and independent Ukraine. Me z vami, slava Ukrainie.
We are with you. Glory be to Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President von der Leyen. We now move to the speakers on behalf of the political group, starting with Manfred Weber for the EPP Group.
Der 24. Februar ist eine tiefe Zäsur in Europa und in der Welt. Krieg ist zurück
significant
in
date
Europa.
in Europe and the world.
Und jedes Wort, jede
War
Rede, die
has
man hält,
returned to
wird
Europe.
klein angesichts der
And of
Leistungen,
course,
die Ukrainer
it seems what
und
we're doing here
Ukrainerinnen
hardly
jetzt
measures
vollbringen.
up to
Deswegen
what the
steht
Ukrainians are now
zunächst
doing.
die Bewunderung im
So
Mittelpunkt.
right now we're
Für die
focusing
Ukrainerinnen
on
und
our
Ukrainer, ihren
admiration
Präsidenten Zelensky an der
for
Spitze,
the Ukrainians,
für ihre
with their
Standhaftigkeit, für ihre
president leading them,
Freiheitsliebe,
their strength, their love of liberty, the decisiveness. They are the heroes of the European way of life. The 24th of February is a day of freedom for Europe, from Dublin to Athens, from Lisbon to Riga, and the same feeling of shock everywhere, dismay with this aggression, on the other hand, admiration for the people of Ukraine. They're fighting for us, they're fighting for our values. These days, this key moment of the 24th of February makes everyone European. This moment forces us to give clear answers. When President Zelensky asks us, are we welcome? May we become members of the EU? Do we belong? Then I say, on behalf of the largest party of Europe, yes, You are welcome. Yes, you belong to the European Union. You are friends. This Kyiv moment forces us to look at the alternatives. Putin is the brutal aggressor. He represents the opposite of our convictions for nationalism, for autocracy. This brutality of trying to have imperial influences, the opposite of us. We want to conquer borders and demonstrate respect to everyone and defend our democracy and defend our freedoms. This key moment also means we have to be honest. We have to make it clear that we have to take action. With these sanctions, we have an exemplary package. I'd like to thank everyone for the last day's work. We, as a group, we support these measures, but one thing is very clear. A few days ago, a week ago, we didn't really hear the same words. Some people were refusing to talk about Nord Stream 2 as a possible sanction. We weren't decisive enough. So today, that means we have to take action, and we have to really abolish this unanimity in foreign policy. This key moment also means a strong NATO, but it also means a strong European pillar. And the EPP visited NATO troops in Lithuania, and I asked the commander, what's your greatest wish? And we say 50% of our time is to deal with the technical differences among, for example, the radios and the equipment. What we need is a European structure. That's what they were asking for us, those people who are now defending Europe. This key moment means we have to think big as Europe. So this conference on the future of Europe has to be rethought. We've concluded our citizens' dialogue. Now it's the right time to make this conference a genuine place to decide about the future of Europe, to have the courage together. And if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? And this key moment demonstrates to us that we have to really look at the policies we're deciding. Energy policy, as Mrs. von der Leyen just said, we have to speed the energy transition up. We have to have new trade partners, new agreements on energy. Our key moment means for us that we are together bound to the U.S. With Joe Biden, we have to use this moment. It demonstrates how important it is to have how decisive our trade partners are for freedom and democracy. We have to have a new free trade agreement with the U.S. to demonstrate this. It's the right time, this key moment, to look at the future development of Europe. A new age is dawning. We need endurance, but the European way of life is worth it. Freedom has no price. The price of freedom is something you pay when you lose it. And Ukrainians are demonstrating that today. And we stand with you, Ukraine.
Thank you, President Weber. I now give the floor on behalf of the S&D Group to Irache Garcia Perez.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, President. Putin's war against Ukraine marks the beginning of a new stage in Europe and in the world. These are historic times, and we need historic decisions. Financial and military support to Ukraine, deconnecting the main Russian banks from the SWIFT platform, the activation of the International Protection Directive to assist Ukrainian refugees, and banning the Kremlin's media machine are all part of a qualitative leap in our capacity to respond. Western democracies have achieved an admirable unity to face this challenge, and it's crucial that we maintain our unity given the serious challenges that we will continue to have to face. The 4 sanctions packages headed by Mr. Borrell are the first step in a long crisis that will raise new dilemmas. For example, how to continue to support Ukraine, or how can we react to probable Russian reprisals. Unity requires courage and sacrifice. It's only with courage and sacrifice that we can achieve the energy independence that we need to defeat Putin. Our utter commitment to a global energy order that's based on renewable energies over the long term needs to be complemented with the creation of strategic reserves of gas for the short term. We also need courage and sacrifice to welcome all the refugees who are fleeing war. We need shared responsibility there. The cowardly attack of Putin shows his real fear, which is democracy. A successful democratic transition in Ukraine needs to serve as an inspiration to those who bravely have taken to the streets in Russia. The fight for peace and freedom of the Russian and Ukrainian peoples require our support. We cannot rest until Putin is judged as a war criminal by the International Criminal Court. Putin's attack will also reveal his accomplices from the extreme European right and a model of living together, of life which represses the opposition, censors the media and denies individual rights. Currently in the cities and towns of Ukraine, it's not only their security and territorial integrity that's at stake, but the world in which we want to live. It can be a democratic world based on international law, diplomacy and human rights, or it can be a different world based on brute force, spheres of influence and violations of rights that should be universal. No tyrant will make us renounce our desire to forge alliances that are based on peace, which protects the sovereignty of nations, progress, freedom, and the integrity of our borders. History is never wrong. We can't leave Ukrainians alone, as the Spanish felt during the first half of the 20th century in the fight between fascism and democracy. The resistance of the heroic Ukrainian people will be the triumph of Western democracies. And let me just conclude with a personal comment. I'm proud of Europe, the Europe of today, the Europe that does not resign itself to what's going on. Europe that looks back to learn from history, but above all, looks forward to defend what we hold most precious, democracy and peace. Thank you.
I now give the floor on behalf of the Renew Europe Group to Stéphane Séjourné.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Madam
Madame la
President,
Présidente, Monsieur le Haut Représentant, chers collègues.
High Representative.
Je souhaite commencer par saluer le courage des hommes et des femmes
welcoming
ukrainiennes
the
et
courage
ukrainiens qui se
of
battent
the
non seulement
Ukrainian
pour
men and
leur
women
patrie, mais
who are
pour
fighting
leur droit à
not
choisir
just
leur
for their
destin.
country but their right to
Président
choose their own
Zelensky et le président
destiny.
du Parlement
President
ukrainien, vous êtes
Zelensky and
l'honneur
the
aujourd'hui
President
des
of the
démocrates.
Ukrainian Parliament,
Ces derniers jours,
you
l'Europe
are
a
heroes
montré
of
qu'elle était
democracy.
le meilleur allié du peuple ukrainien.
The European Parliament
L'Europe
today
a
has
aussi
shown it
démontré
is
qu'elle
a
était
strong
le
ally
bouclier
of the
qui
Ukrainian
protège
people.
la démocratie et nos
Europe is
libertés
a shield
pour
that
chaque peuple de
protects
l'Union.
its democracy and freedoms for all the peoples of Europe. Of all the decisions taken this week,
Je vous garantis le soutien absolu
let me just
de mon groupe
say
politique.
you have the absolute
Nous mesurons
support
le
of our
travail
political group.
énorme qui a été fait par les institutions
There
européennes
is huge
pour
work
prendre
that
et
has been done
rendre
by the European
opérationnelles les
institutions
sanctions
in order
et les
to put
mesures
in
de
place and make
soutien à
operational
l'Ukraine.
these sanctions and support
Seul
measures for
ou divisé,
Ukraine.
je n'ose imaginer ce que Poutine
Alone
aurait
or
fait de
divided,
notre
I can't even
de notre
imagine
continent. Vous avez
what
été, en
Putin
quelque
would
sorte,
have
à
done
la
to
hauteur
our
de
continent.
l'histoire.
You have been up to this historic
Permettez-moi
challenge.
d'appeler
Let me go even further. When it comes to support measures for Ukraine, I believe giving the candidate status to Ukraine is important. Now, of course, it will take some time for the Ukraine to join the EU. There'll be a rigorous process, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that the Ukrainians are fighting for democracy. They are already part of our community. I think the status of candidate country would be a fair acknowledgement for this. We expect to see strong sanctions to really dry up all of the financial resources for Putin in this war. Technological embargoes, gas, oil, against the oligarchs as well, an end to the golden passports and residence rights, as you have mentioned, Madam President. All of these sanctions must be activated as soon as possible. We hope that this will not hit the Russian people too hard, as we know who are majoritarily opposed to this war. We need to welcome the Russian opposition here in this hemicycle as well. Now, these measures will have a cost for our economy, so we need to neutralise costs at a European level for the countries and companies who are hardest hit by this. Let me conclude with one final point, Mr. President, Madam President, to say that there is still some work to be done for Europe to guarantee its solidarity as shown by this crisis. Our journey towards strategic economy needs to include a review of the defence budget at national and European levels, as well as an energy autonomy strategy as well. Colleagues, the protection of our European model comes at a cost. My political group believes that our freedoms are a fundamental value. We are willing to assume that cost when it comes to sanctions or investment in tools of European sovereignty. We understand sacrifices of the European people and also the sacrifices of millions of Europeans before us who have made this the freest continent in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor on behalf of the Green Group to Philip Lamberts.
Dear Ukrainian friends, we do not have enough words to praise your courage and determination to defend your freedom. Your resistance is a wake-up call to all democrats around the world. Without the will to fight, democracy will perish. To your aggressor, I say, your lies for justifying war cannot and will not remain unchallenged. No, Mr. Putin, Ukraine is not ruled by Nazis. On the contrary, its legitimately elected president stems from a family who was blooded in the Holocaust. No, Mr. Putin, there's no genocide going on in the Donbass. What is happening there is a war that you yourself started 8 years ago, which took already 14,000 lives, and that your invasion brings only to a new level. No, Mr. Putin, Ukraine has never intended to get nuclear weapons. On the contrary, it relinquished voluntarily those it inherited in 1991 from the Soviet Union in exchange for its territorial integrity, which you have been trampling on ever since you annexed Crimea in 2014. No, Mr. Putin, there was no perspective for Ukraine to join NATO in the foreseeable future. And if there is such an aspiration in Ukraine, as there was in so many nations once subjugated by the Soviet Union, your aggression against Ukraine explains why. No, Mr. Putin, the NATO member states have no intention to deny the Russian people's right to peace and security. It is your reckless actions that imperil those legitimate aspirations. The reality, Mr. Putin, is that the people of Ukraine chose for freedom, for democracy, for rule of law, for peace. And that choice, made by a people so close to Russia as by history and geography, was never a threat to Russia's security, but to the very existence of your authoritarian and kleptocratic rule. This is the real reason for the invasion, at the cost of precious human lives and livelihoods, both Ukrainian and Russian. The reality, Mr. Putin, is that your brutal aggression against the Ukrainian people is doomed to fail. You wanted to deny their very existence as a people. Your aggression in cementing their unity against the invader. As citizens of the European Union, we know that the war on Ukraine is more than just an aggression against a sovereign state. It is a direct challenge to the values that lie at the foundation of our union. Ever since it was started, the European project was and remains a peace project, so that the rule of brute force be replaced by the rule of law, so that democracy, dialogue, compromise and cooperation across national borders provide the best basis for shared and sustainable prosperity. We Europeans cannot stand by idle when a partner country is invaded and when our fundamental values are challenged in such a brutal way. This is why, short of direct military intervention, which would be foolish, we must and we will provide the Ukrainian people with all the support we can in order to face the aggression. This is why we must and we will provide safe haven without any discrimination to all those who are fleeing the war to seek refuge on our territory. This is why we must and we will mobilize all political, economic and financial means at our disposal to exert maximal pressure on Putin's Russia in order to make him stop his aggression. And let me be clear to the people of Russia, we have no quarrel with you. You too have the right to live in dignity, and many of you are standing up daily to defend it at great personal risk. We know that resuming the diplomatic dialogue with your country is the only path to a sustainable peace on our continent, but this can only happen if the aggression stops. As for us Europeans, meeting the challenge put to us by Putin's war will test our strength, our determination, and above all, our unity. It will not come cheap. Therefore, it will force us to make hard choices. The first must be for cohesion within and across member states. The global financial crisis, the Eurozone crisis and the pandemic have deepened social and economic injustice in our union. It cannot be that once again the brunt of the massive efforts required to counter Putin's war will be carried by the weakest shoulders. Should that be the case, the legitimate resentment would sap the very basis of our social contract as well as those of our union. And this would fulfill one of Putin's unset goals, dividing us. The second must be for energy independence. Indeed, our massive dependence on Russia for raw materials and energy is a primary reason for Europe's lack of determination to deter the Russian regime up until now. No surprise, when 40% of our gas, 30% of our coal, of our oil and of our nuclear fuels, don't forget that, is provided by Russia. As the EU is almost devoid of these resources, is our plan really to replace this massive dependence from Russia with another equally massive dependence from anyone else? We say that energy independence is the key for the EU to become a respected geopolitical player, and that will never be achieved by putting gas and nuclear at the heart of our energy strategy. As the President said, only renewables and energy efficiency can give us the strategic autonomy we seek. It is not just for the climate that we must accelerate the energy transition. It is for our security and for the resilience of our economies. Dear colleagues, never before has the European Union been challenged in such a direct and brutal way. I have no doubt that we collectively, and only collectively, have the strength, the resources, the determination, and above all, the wisdom to meet this challenge together with Ukraine, because we belong together. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor now to Marco Zanni on behalf of the ID Group.
Grazie mille, Presidente della Commissione Europea,
President of the European Commission, President of the Council,
rappresentante.
High Representative. The cowardly attack of the Russian regime is showing Europe once again the ugliest images of its history, as was recalled by President von der Leyen, 30 years since the war in the Balkans. Once again in 2022, we're talking about a war in Europe. Our support and our extraordinary admiration goes to the Ukrainian people, these people who are tenaciously defending their freedom and their sovereignty when faced with an unacceptable attack. It's great to see unanimous criticism of the attack, and it's great to see that perhaps for the first time European Union institutions have firmly and rapidly responded to an emergency situation. Everyone's recalled the sanctions package that has been launched, and in terms of size, length and impact, it is unequalled in European history. The approach and the unity with which the European institutions have moved are unprecedented. Support for the Ukrainian people needs to be total, and we need to ensure that we have peace as soon as possible, a peace which restores the territorial integrity of Ukraine. But at the same time, as some of you have recalled, we also need to look at the fact that the 24th of February has changed our history. There's going to be a before the 24th of February and an after the 24th of February. And we have to look at what our errors and mistakes have been in the past, what has led to us being unprepared for a post-February the 24th period. Russia isn't the only authoritarian regime that is threatening the global order, and that's something we need to note. So let's try and look at these errors that we've made. We, several times, mentioned our dependence on Russia in terms of energy, gas, oil, raw materials. And they're also a market for our goods. But this dependency was our political choice. We chose not to use our own energy resources and to buy them from Russia or elsewhere instead. Europe is not a country, well, an area, excuse me, that is poor in energy resources. That's something we've chosen to be. And let me give you an example. In the 1990s in Italy, we were producing 20 billion cubic meters of gas a year. Today we produce 3, not because gas in Italy has run out, but because we've decided not to use it. And on sanctions, as we've said, this package is unprecedented. But we have to be clear, it's going to have an impact on our economy as well. And let me take up what our colleague Mr. Lamberts has said. We've had 2 years of pandemic, we've had an unprecedented economic crisis, and we can't have the consequences of these sanctions weighing on our businesses and on our citizens. So I hope that the Commission will act quickly once again to ensure that this doesn't happen, to ensure that our businesses and our citizens receive the appropriate support. Let me conclude just with a couple of comments. Firstly, what we've seen happen with Russia needs to be a lesson for the future. There's another non-liberal regime that's threatening the West, and that is China. Let's not make the same mistakes with China that we made with Russia. Let's reduce Europe's dependency on China. That is crucial. My second point is more personal in nature, and with this I will conclude. These are times of history in which politicians are split between the great and the less great. In my country, we say men and small men. And once again, I note that unfortunately, at this time, some people in this parliament wanted to see themselves recalled as small men. They prevented my political group from fully supporting the resolution that we're going to be voting on. And this is something that is a small gesture that doesn't damage my political group, doesn't damage others. I think it damages this institution, which could have assumed a unanimous position. Thank you.
I give the floor next on behalf of the ECR group to Mr. Legutko.
Madam President, the war created an entirely new situation, and we have to do everything we can to win this war, because it's our war, the war of all European nations. Once Putin decided to go ahead with the invasion, it became clear he is determined to subdue Ukraine and will not hesitate to resort to the extreme measures. It was he who once said, let me remind you, that the collapse of the Soviet Union had been the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the century. So there should be no misunderstanding as to his intentions. He plans to create what was once the Soviet Empire, perhaps not with one stroke, but that is definitely his final objective. Moreover, he has been more or less open about it all along. The Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people are opposing the invaders, and they desperately need some military backup arms and other tools of defense. Fortunately, after the initial opposition from some countries, nowadays it is about 20 governments, I think, that started helping the Ukrainians. And it's very good that some time ago in the Council, the member states decided to create European Peace Facility, and that these funds can be now used to help Ukraine. And I'm proud to say that it is my government that was first to propose as early as Thursday morning to activate European Peace Facility. So the flow of arms, the flow of necessary technology and other means of defense must continue. Whatever the effects of the sanctions, who will win the war will be ultimately decided on the battlefield. And finally, I must say this. I'm sorry, I must say this, because as usual, the EU is, with its narcissistic and self-congratulatory proclivities, likes to escape responsibility. Putin made his decision because he was induced by the weakness of the West. Let us be frank. He did not think much of the Western leaders, and it showed. He didn't hide it. And in a way, he was right, having been for a long time pampered by the French and German governments, by some American administrations, also by the European Commission that was both unable and unwilling to stymie the Nord Stream projects. To those Western leaders and governments that took upon themselves the job of dealing with Russia, particularly to the German politicians, but not only to them, we must say today, ladies and gentlemen, you blew it, and your leadership credibility is gone. It's time for a reset, and let us start by enabling Ukraine to join the European Union.
I give the floor next to Manon Aubry on behalf of the Left Group.
Madame la Présidente, Madame la Présidente de la Commission européenne,
Madam President of the European
revient en
Commission,
Europe.
war has come back to
Et je fais
Europe.
partie de cette
I am part of the
génération
generation
née après
that
la
was
guerre
born
froide,
after the Cold
qui n'a pas
War,
connu
that did
le
not
choc
know
guerrier des
this
grandes puissances
clash of
et à qui on a
the
répété depuis
big powers.
l'enfance que
I have been
l'Europe,
told since
c'était la
childhood
paix.
that Europe is peace.
Mais les fantômes du passé
However, the
ressurgissent.
ghosts of the past
Et la guerre est
are
de
coming back
retour.
to haunt us.
Et je veux
War
le dire ici très
is back,
clairement.
and let me say very
Vladimir
clearly,
Poutine
Vladimir
emporte
Putin
l'entière
is
responsabilité.
entirely
Et aujourd'hui,
responsible,
du sang sur
and
les mains.
today he has blood on his
Notre
hands.
groupe condamne avec la
Our
plus grande
group
fermeté
firmly
l'intolérable
condemns
agression
the
militaire contre l'Ukraine
unacceptable
et salue la
military Russian
résistance
aggression
héroïque
against
des
Ukraine
Ukrainiens
and
et de leur président Zelensky
would like to highlight
à
the heroic
l'invasion.
resistance of the Ukrainians and their
grondent,
presidents in the face
les
of
balles
this
pleuvent.
invasion.
Et les
The
civils
tanks are
tentent
rolling
de
in, the
trouver un
bullets
abri, la peur au
are raining
ventre,
down.
tantôt dans le métro,
Terrified
tantôt
civilians
sur
are
les
trying to
routes
find
de l'exil.
shelter, whether in the underground
C'est
or on the
d'abord
road
à eux
to
que je veux
exile,
penser.
and it's those people I'd like to think of first
les
and
Ukrainiens
foremost.
doivent
The
savoir
Ukrainians
que
need
nous
to
ne les
know
abandonnerons
that we
pas.
are not going to
Je veux dire au
abandon them.
président Zelensky que
Let me say
je
to
remercie
President
d'avoir pris le temps
Zelensky
aujourd'hui de
that
s'adresser
I
à notre
very much
Parlement,
thank him for taking the
que
time
la
today to speak
démocratie,
to our
que la
Parliament.
liberté pour lesquelles son
Democracy
peuple
and
se bat
freedom, those
sont
things
nos
that his
valeurs.
people are fighting for, these are
Et précisément la
our
hantise de
values
Vladimir Poutine.
too. They are the
Nous
antithesis
devons envoyer
of
une
Putin.
aide humanitaire d'urgence
We
sans
need to
condition et
urgently
accueillir
send
les réfugiés
humanitarian assistance
sans
without any
distinction de
conditions. We
couleur
need
de
taking
peau,
refugees
sans
without
mais,
any
sans
distinctions of the colour of
ergoté.
skins,
La
with no
crise est humanitaire, mais elle est
but, with
aussi
no
évidemment plus que
arguments.
jamais
The
géopolitique.
humanitarian crisis is also
Poutine veut nous
geopolitical.
faire entrer dans un
Putin
monde de
wants
chaos
to take us into
et
a
de
world of
brutalité
chaos
où la
and
règle du plus fort
brutality
domine.
where the
Et je le
strongest
dis ici
prevail.
avec
And I
solennité.
say this
Chers
very
collègues, chère
seriously.
présidente von der Leyen,
Colleagues,
cher
President
président
von
du
der Leyen,
Conseil,
President Michel,
nous ne pouvons accepter
we
d'entrer
cannot
dans un jeu terrible
accept
et acter que l'Europe
to
se transforme
become part of this
durablement
terrible
en
game
champ de
and for
bataille.
Europe to become a
Je vous mets en garde,
battlefield.
collègues.
I
Contre
warn
la
you,
surenchère
colleagues, against
militaire et la course
becoming
aux
involved
armements
in
qui mettrait
military
notre
one-upmanship
continent
and an
à
arms
feu
race
et à sang.
that would turn our
Comme
continent
le disait
into
très justement
fire
Jean
and blood.
Jaurès,
As
on
Jean
ne fait
Jaurès
pas la
rightly
guerre
said, you
pour se
cannot
débarrasser
wage
de la
war
guerre.
to end war.
L'Union européenne doit au
The
contraire
European
défendre quoi qu'il
Union
en coûte
must,
le seul
however,
objectif
defend at any
valable,
cost
la
the
paix
only really valid
et la
objective, and that
désescalade.
is peace and
Des sanctions
de-escalation.
fortes et ciblées sont
Strong
prises,
and targeted
mais pour
sanctions have
certaines
been
d'entre elles,
taken,
comment
but
voulez-vous
for
les
some of them,
appliquer
how will they
réellement
be
quand on
truly
garantit
applied when there
l'impunité
is
des
still
paradis
impunity
fiscaux
for tax
qui
havens
planquent
which
les avoirs des
hide
oligarques
the
russes? Comme
wealth
quoi
of
lutter contre
Russian
l'évasion fiscale
oligarchs?
et aussi lutter contre la criminalité
We
au
need
niveau
to
international.
tackle
Soyons
tax
lucides.
evasion and criminality
Les
at an
sanctions
international level.
économiques
We should be
n'auront
clear,
qu'un temps,
these
car
economic
les peuples
sanctions
vont
can
en
only
subir les
last so long.
conséquences,
The
notamment
people
à
will
travers
feel
des
the
hausses de prix
consequences
qui
through
doivent
price
être
rises that will
compensées.
have to be
Nous le
compensated.
savons tous.
We all know that the
La seule
only really
option
sustainable
durable est
option is
diplomatique. Et tous nos
diplomacy.
efforts
All of our
doivent être
efforts have to
tournés
be
vers
focused
l'obtention d'un
on
cessez-le-feu
obtaining
et du
a
retrait des
ceasefire and
troupes
seeing the
russes.
withdrawal of Russian
Oui,
troops.
le chemin de la paix est
The
laborieux.
way to the
Mais
path to peace
il est le
is
seul
difficult,
raisonnable à
but
cette
it is
heure.
the only reasonable
L'OTAN,
path
alliance
we
militaire
have.
héritée de la guerre froide, n'est
NATO,
pas la
a
solution.
military alliance, a
Le
legacy
juge de
of the
paix
Cold War, is
international
not
n'est
the
pas l'OTAN,
solution.
c'est
NATO
l'ONU.
does not judge on
L'espace
world
de
peace. That is
discussion
the
des conditions de
United
sécurité du
Nations.
continent n'est
The
pas
place to
l'OTAN,
discuss
c'est
the security of
l'OSCE.
the continent is not NATO, it's
Le
the
président
OSCE.
ukrainien a évoqué
The
des pistes
Ukrainian
pour sortir
president
par le
has
haut.
talked
Par
about ways
exemple,
to
un
move
statut de
forward. For example, a statue
neutralité
of
protégé par l'ONU.
neutrality protected
Accompagnons
by
cette
the United
possibilité.
Nations. We should support
Je veux
this
pas mentir
possibility.
aux
I don't
citoyens.
want to lie to the
Il n'y a
citizens.
pas de
There
solution
is no miracle
miracle.
solution. But
Mais
I
j'ai une
do
conviction
have a very
profonde.
firm
La
conviction.
véritable fermeté face à Poutine n'est pas de s'enfermer dans le cercle
What we need to do
vicieux du
to
œil
counter
pour œil, dent
Putin
pour
is
dent.
not to enter into a vicious cycle of
L'espoir vient au
eye for
contraire de
an
la
eye, a
mobilisation des
tooth for a
peuples pour la
tooth.
paix.
What we need
Jusqu'en
to see is
Russie,
the mobilization
à
of people
Rostov-le-Don,
for poor,
juste
for
à côté de la
peace.
frontière
In Russia,
ukrainienne, en
at
Russie, une jeune femme a reçu
Rostov-sur-le-Don,
8 jours
there
de
was
prison
a
pour s'être
young
postée
woman who
seule
was
dans la rue
imprisoned
avec une
for
pancarte
8 days simply for standing in the street with a placard. And that is a symbol for the mobilization that Putin wants to try and make invisible. She symbolizes the courage of thousands of Russians who are defying the fierce repression of Putin. There are hundreds of thousands of Europeans who've taken the Ukrainian flag and gone into the streets to call for peace at any cost. And let me end with the words from Albert Camus on the 8th of August 1945, just after the bombing of Hiroshima. Looking at these terrifying perspectives for humanity, we see now that peace is the only fight that is really worth fighting for. It is more than a prayer. This is a call from the people to their governments. It is a choice between hell and between reason. Thank you very much.
Next, on behalf of the non-attached members, to Kinga Gál.
Elnök asszony.
Madam President, Mr. High Representative, until last night, more than 90,000 refugees arrived to Hungary. This is the biggest humanitarian program in Hungary in history, and we are trying to help everybody who wants to come to Hungary. Everybody is welcome, everybody will be helped, irrespective of which part of Ukraine they are coming from and irrespective of their ethnicity. The entire country has been mobilized to help them. The military aggression, we fully condemn the military aggression against Ukraine. And we stand for the territorial integrity of Ukraine and the sovereignty of Ukraine. We are in favor of united European action, and we also are in favor of Ukraine's candidate status. And despite all the disinformation, we support all common sanctions, common decisions. Also, the European Peace Facility should be activated. We must not let ourselves be drawn into this tragic war just on the other side of the border. Ethnic minorities are even more vulnerable in war than in peace times. We must pay attention to the security of the ethnic Hungarian community in Transcarpathia. We need calm, we need wisdom, and we need the two parties to engage in talks again. We need to restore peace in the neighborhood, and we must help Ukraine in any way we can. Thank you.
Danke, Frau Kollegin.
Thank you very much. Now the next speaker is Mrs. Juncker-Chetena.
Ukraine signed in their blood the EU membership. I myself must apologize to the Ukrainians and all others that I was too weak to convince my friends in the West in time that Putin is a major threat, and then the biggest provocation is not our NATO or EU memberships, but not being invited in joining NATO and the EU. But today there are no more Eastern or Western Europeans. There is only our joint responsibility for the European continent. I want to turn to the Russians. You also can stop the war criminal Putin. I understand that you yourselves are imprisoned and poisoned with lie. But join us nonetheless. The Ukrainians are dying for you also, for a free Russia. Some human being in the Kremlin must act too, to isolate this war criminal with a nuclear button in his hands. Those maps who went to the occupied Crimea must now go to Putin and stop him. Ukrainian blood binds you. We are witnessing the beginning of an end for Putin. When that end will come, I cannot tell you. I only know that we must do all that is in our power to bring it closer. Thank you, Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Frau Kollegin.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Pedro Marques, you have the floor.
Muito obrigado, Presidente, Presidente da Comissão.
Thank you very much, Vice President, Madam President,
Uma agressão bárbara a Estado
and High
livre e uma
Representative.
Europa que se une
Barbaric
contra o
aggression
regresso do
against
mundo à Guerra
a
Fria.
free country
Uma
in
guerra que já
Europe.
não é apenas
And
uma
of course,
miragem.
we're all
Há povo
united.
que sofre e
Reminds us
mundo
of
que
the
muda.
Cold War.
Sim,
This
armamos a
war
Ucrânia. Sim,
is not an
infligimos
illusion.
sanções sem paralelo
A
a
people
Putin
is
e
suffering.
aos
Yes,
oligarcas.
for the Ukraine, we have
Isolamos a
to
Rússia de
have
Putin do mundo livre.
unprecedented sanctions against Russia and his oligarchs.
E o exemplo dos
We
milhares
have
que
to
Putin
liberate
prendeu por
Ukraine
gritarem
from
pelo fim da
Putin.
guerra.
And we
Se
also
hoje
have to
somos
see
menos
that
livres devido a
Putin
esta guerra,
is
lutaremos com
trying
mais força
to
pela
kill
ambição do
people
sonho
if we
europeu
don't react today, then we won't have the possibility of remaining united as a union. We have to work and express our solidarity and maintain our autonomy in the world. And we have to leave this crisis unified. We have to do this for the children and do this for the children of the brave and courageous Ukrainians. Thank you very much. Mr. Auštrevičius is next.
Mr. Chair, Madam President, High Commissioner, dear colleagues, dear Ukrainians, today we are back to 28 in the European Union again. Ukraine has emerged as a great member of the European family. Ukraine is bravely fighting for European values and freedom for Europeans. Let us give Ukraine its due, providing a candidate status now and then accepting it in the European Union. Every day that passes makes things worse for Ukraine, and we cannot allow it. Today, the future and the fate of Europe is at stake in Ukraine. Russia's treacherous operation only confirms the Putin's regime's choice to draw new red lines on the face of Europe. By ordering the attack on Ukraine, the Russian leader Putin has become a war criminal and has brought the Belarusian dictator Lukashenko with him. They are already in the dustbin of history. Their actions are already condemned and soon to be convicted. Let us give Ukraine a weapon with which it can defend itself against the aggressor. It's our duty. And let us provide humanitarian aid to its people who are suffering from the crimes of its aggressor. The support must be such that the West can look Ukraine in the eye. Let us isolate Russia with full political, economic, and cultural blockade. Keep Russia down, Kremlin cronies out, and the Russian people close. Ukraine's victory is our victory. Slava Ukraini!
Unser nächster Redner ist Herr
Next
Sergej
speaker,
Lagodinsky.
Mr. Sergej Lagodinsky.
Slava Ukraini! We did not ask for this confrontation. Ukrainians did not ask for this confrontation. Ukrainians didn't spread hate. Ukrainians didn't dream of empires. Ukrainians did not dictate their neighbors what policies to follow and which alliances to join. Ukrainians did not occupy, did not annex, and did not blackmail. Those actions came from Moscow. And my heart is bleeding when I say those words. But Ukrainians, all they want is to live a free life in a free country. This is not much to ask, but this is a lot to defend. And this is why it is our European moral imperative to help Ukrainians with refuge and money, but yes, also with military equipment, to help them defend their own choice, to help them save their children, their families, their loved ones, the loved ones who take arms and walk to battles, help them to return. And yes, this is why we have no other options than to put a clear alternative in front of President Putin. Either you stop this war now, or you will have to bear the consequences that will be devastating. We did not ask for this confrontation. You did.
Kollege Kofod, you are the next
Mr.
one.
Kofod, next speaker. Thank you very much, Vice President. Russia has to be hit by the hardest sanctions. We have to send weapons to Ukraine, we have to send money, we have to send humanitarian aid, and we have to receive those poor people who are forced to flee Ukraine, who are now arriving in our home. We have to say no to Putin's regime, and we have to demonstrate that the aggression that Putin has demonstrated towards a peaceful neighbor is unacceptable, that this action we will respond with serious consequences, and the Kremlin's terror will never be tolerated by the free world. The free world can only be on the side of Ukraine. I love Europe because of its diversity. And Ukraine is part of Europe. The people who are fleeing from Ukraine, they are Europeans, and they are part of our European family. The Ukrainians are being attacked by Putin, and so therefore we should demonstrate our friendship and help. Dictatorship can never succeed, and Putin will never have enough. Right now, it's impacting Ukraine. In the future, it could be affecting other European countries. We have to say stop. We have to stand up, and we have to be alert and ensure every country's right to determine on its own destiny. We have to be prepared to defend ourselves against any tyrant who will attack us with terror and war. We need strength in NATO, and we need larger defense budgets. I support this resolution. Thank you very much.
Danke.
Thank you very much. After the cleaning is Mr. Fitta.
Grazie Presidente, Presidente della Commissione.
Thank you, President,
Una
President
tragedia
of the Commission.
ingiustificabile sta colpendo il nostro continente.
An unacceptable
Quello che
tragedy.
sta accadendo sotto i nostri
What's
occhi a
happening in
pochi
our
chilometri dai
continent,
nostri
in front
confini,
of our eyes,
è
just
un
a few
attacco
kilometers away from our
condotto dalla
borders,
Federazione
is
Russa
an
a
attack
tutto
being
campo
carried
contro
out
la
from the Russian
sovranità e l'integrità
Federation
territoriale di un paese
on
democratico.
the territorial
Le immagini che
integrity
ci
and
giungono
sovereignty
dall'Ucraina
of a democratic
testimoniano non
country. The
solo un
images
attacco
that come from
ingiustificato
Ukraine
e
show
indiscriminato, ma la
that the
palese
attack is
violazione di
indiscriminate
tutte
and
le regole del
unacceptable,
diritto
but
internazionale,
also
comprese quelle che
show
regolano
clear
i conflitti.
violations of
Bisogna
international
reagire
law.
per mettere fine
We
a
need
queste
to
azioni mirate
act
contro
to
obiettivi
put an
civili,
end
donne e
to
bambini,
these
che non
actions which are aimed
rappresentano una
at
guerra vera e
women
propria,
and children,
ma
civilian
una barbarie,
populations.
i cui
This is not
responsabili
war,
dovranno
this
essere
is
chiamati in causa nelle sedi
barbaric,
competenti.
and those who are
Barbarie alla
responsible
quale il popolo
need to
ucraino,
be
cui
judged for their
esprimiamo la
actions.
nostra piena
These are
solidarietà e
barbaric actions against the
vicinanza, sta seguendo
the Ukrainian,
reagendo con
people.
coraggio,
We
dignità e con
salute
grande spirito
their
di resilienza.
bravery and
Così
their
come
resilience.
penso che oggi sia opportuno
I think
sottolineare
it's
quello
important
che è
today to
l'azione, il
emphasize
ruolo
that
dei
the
paesi del confine
actions
orientale, i quali stanno
and
svolgendo
role
un'azione
of
nell'accoglienza e nella
countries
gestione dell'emergenza umanitaria
on
che è
Ukraine's western
encomiabile.
border
Una reazione, quella
are
ucraina,
crucial.
forse per
They're
molti
carrying out
inaspettata
very
e che
important
richiede da parte
humanitarian
nostra,
work.
in cooperazione con altri
We
paesi
need
dell'Alleanza
to work
Atlantica
together
e della
with
comunità
NATO and
internazionale, un
other
impegno ancora
countries
maggiore per
across the
difendere
globe
i valori
in
di
order to
libertà e
defend the
democrazia.
values of
Ed è per
freedom
questo
and
che
democracy.
l'Unione Europea e
And
l'Occidente
it's
hanno
because of that
sicuramente
that the European
compiuto nel
Union
passato
and the West,
alcuni errori, ma oggi è il momento dell'unità e
who
della
have made
fermezza.
mistakes in the
Per
past,
questo da parte
need
del nostro
to
gruppo
stand
ribadisco
firm,
il pieno
and
sostegno alle
together
sanzioni
today
e a tutte quelle
our
azioni che
group
vanno a
fully
colpire il
supports
potere
the
economico
sanctions
e
and
militare
any
di
actions
Mosca
that
e
will
che
strike
costringono il
at
Cremlino a
Moscow's
mettere fine a
military
questa
and
vergognosa
economic
offensiva nei
power. We want to
confronti
see Moscow
dell'Ucraina.
forced
Ma al
to
tempo
end
stesso
this
è
shameful
opportuno
conflict
anche
in
far sì che
Ukraine.
nel
We
preservare
also
l'unità
need to be aware
politica
that
e le
in
decisioni dell'Unione
preserving
Europea si riesca a
political
mantenere
unity,
il consenso e l'opinione pubblica europea
we need
su quanto già
to
è accaduto
work
oltre a
hard
questi 2 anni di
to
pandemia
ensure
sul
that public
fronte
opinion is
economico.
with us.
Ecco perché
And
dobbiamo ragionare con
the people
forza
of
per
Europe are
guardare
going
con
to suffer,
attenzione
given that
all'istituzione
this
di
is
un
coming on top of the
fondo per
pandemic and
poter
economic
garantire ai
crisis. So we
cittadini e le
need a
categorie
fund
colpite da
to
queste sanzioni.
provide
Grazie.
funds to citizens who are struck by these sanctions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mrs. Villanueva Ruiz.
Gracias, Presidenta. Thank you very much,
Quiero hoy
President.
expresar nuestra
Let me say that we firmly condemn the invasion by Putin, and we want to show maximum solidarity to the victims in Ukraine in these very difficult times. It's also important to remember that today there are extreme right groups in this chamber who are allies of Putin and who have helped finance and work for the destabilization of Europe, and this is not something we can continue to hide. Europe needs to act firmly and with the objective of building peace. The priority has to be to stem the loss of human lives. This conflict cannot be used to further other interests. We need to foster spaces of international dialogue. We need to use all the tools we have at our disposal to promote that dialogue. We know that that is the only way to end this terrible tragedy. Let us not repeat old errors and see military escalation, which will lead to years of pain. This is the moment to be involved in politics and show that Europe is up to this challenge. Peace is the only objective. Thank you very much.
Danke, Frau Kollegin.
Thank you much indeed. Now I'll give the floor to Mr. Castaldo.
Thank you, Chair. Today, we are not simply condemning an unjustifiable aggression. Today, we stand up united in this House to face the criminal invasion of an authoritarian regime against international law, our principles, our values, therefore against all of us. Putin's cynical bet assumes he would quickly overthrow the Ukrainian democracy with his divisions on the ground, but also brings other divisions, no less dangerous, through propaganda and fear within our countries among our peoples. Our bond and duty is to make sure that it will fail, with our resolute support to the heroic resistance in Ukraine and its official recognition as EU candidates, and with the immediate adoption of a new solidarity package based on common European bonds. We must immediately support also our companies and families who will suffer the dire consequences of the dutiful sets of sanctions aimed at bringing Moscow to the negotiating table. This is not the war of all the Russians. This is a crime perpetrated by a tyrant and his accomplices. Thousands of citizens are bravely taking to the streets to shout their clear no, risking their lives to oppose his imperialistic ravings. They deserve our full support. This existential threat is a crucial moment in our history and calls for exceptional efforts if we really want to protect peace, democracy and our common destiny. Sometimes it takes courage to grow up and become who we really are. Slava Europa, Slava Ukraina.
Unser nächster Redner ist
Thank you much indeed. Mr. Gahler, please.
Frau Präsidentin, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, szanowni ukraińscy Drudzy, Slava Ukraini.
Slava Ukraini.
Was sich hier vor unseren Augen abspielt, ist
What's
Krieg in
happening
Europa in
is
Echtzeit.
war in Europe in real
Unermessliches
time.
Leid unschuldiger Menschen
Suffering
ist die größte
innocent people
Katastrophe für die
is the
Ukraine
biggest
seit
catastrophe
dem
for
deutschen Einmarsch 1941.
Ukraine since
Und es schuld
1941 when
und
Germany
ausschließlich in
invaded,
Verantwortung
and the only
eines
responsible
zynischen,
is a
ständig lügenden und menschenverachtenden
cynical,
russischen Diktators,
lying
der die Existenz der
dictator
Ukraine als demokratischer, unabhängiger
who
Staat
rejects
beenden
the
und sie gegen den Willen
existence
der
of
Menschen
Ukraine as an
heim ins
independent
Reich holen
state
will.
and wants to
Dieser
bring
Versuch
his people
läuft
back
gerade
into the empire.
und dieser Versuch muss scheitern.
This must fail.
Als die Sowjetunion 1948 die Blockade Westberlins begann, die
1948,
Rote
beginning
Armee
of the
stand rundherum,
Berlin blockade.
da richtete der regierende Bürgermeister Ernst Reuter einen Appell an
Ernst
die Völker der
Reuter,
Welt. Heute
then Berlin mayor,
versucht
spoke
das
to the world and he
revisionistische
said,
Russland mit seinen
revisionist Russia
Invasionstruppen die
is trying
ukrainische
to
Hauptstadt einzukreisen und zu
do the
strangulieren
same thing now
und
in
die freien
Ukraine
Menschen dort in die sowjetische Knechtschaft zu führen.
to put
Und deshalb
the
ist es angebracht,
Ukrainian
diesen
people
Appell zu wiederholen.
into
Ihr Völker
their
der
guardianship.
Welt, ihr Völker in Amerika,
Peoples
in
of the
Europa,
world, in
der
America,
freien
in
Welt,
Europe, in the free
schaut auf
world,
diese Stadt und dieses
look
Land
at that
und
city,
erkennt,
look at
dass
that
ihr
country,
dieses Land
and
und
understand
dieses Volk
that that
nicht
country, that
preisgeben
people
dürft, nicht preisgeben könnt.
cannot be left
Diesem Volk,
behind.
das die Revolution der Würde mit ukrainischen und Europafahnen bewirkt hat,
This
das gesagt
people
hat, wohin es schaut
and has said
und wohin es strebt,
where it
dem
wants to
müssen wir
be,
heute ein politisches
we
Signal
need to
geben,
give that people
dass sie
a
zu uns
political
gehören,
signal that they belong
dass
to
ihr
us,
Freiheitskampf nicht vergebens ist,
that their
dass das
fight for
böse,
freedom isn't
das
in vain,
gleichermaßen stalinistische
that
und
this
faschistische
evil, this
Putin-Regime
Stalinist fascist Putin regime will not be victorious. And after all of this is over, they can start reconstruction on a path to Europe. So I would ask for your approval of this resolution. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Herr Gahler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gahler. Next we have Mr. Pikkula.
Thank you. Yes, the aggression of Russia against Ukraine can be the beginning of the end of humankind, but it could also be the beginning of a new world order. The main reason for the war is the authoritarian rule of Putin. Which is worse, Putin's aggression or his narrative justifying violence? Putin counted on Ukraine's passiveness and the division of the West, but he overestimated his strength and underestimated the Ukrainian resilience and the ability of the West to come together. This war reminds me of the military aggression against my country, Croatia, 30 years ago. Attacks on children, civilian buildings, destruction and refugees. Just as Milosevic did, Putin must answer for his actions before the International Criminal Court. Putin will find it difficult to come out of this war. Kremlin might experience the Russian version of the Maidan. History has shown that dictators can be vanquished, but it is equally important to eliminate the circumstances leading to their rule. Ukraine will bleed, but Putin's Russia will bleed out. Glory to Ukraine and Slava Ukraini.
Next, we have Nathalie Loiseau.
Il a fallu une guerre.
It took a war.
Il a fallu une guerre sur le
It
sol
took a war
européen
on
pour que
European
l'Europe
soil
apprenne à
for
parler le
Europe to learn to
langage de la
speak the language of
puissance.
power.
Il a fallu
It
Vladimir
took
Poutine
Vladimir Putin
et sa guerre de trop
and his
pour
war
que
too
le lien
far
transatlantique
for
se
the
resserre,
transatlantic
que
ties
l'OTAN
to
se
retighten,
réveille et que la
for NATO to
défense
wake up, and for
européenne
European
naisse
defence
enfin.
finally to emerge.
Mais il a surtout fallu
But it took
l'extraordinaire
above all
courage
the extraordinary
de
courage
Volodymyr
of
Zelensky et
Vladimir
du peuple
Zelensky
ukrainien
and the Ukrainian
pour que
people
nous nous sentions
for us
enfin
finally
obligés
to feel obliged
d'essayer
to
d'être à
try
la hauteur.
to rise to the occasion.
Ne nous leurrons pas.
Let's not
La
fool
crise sera
ourselves. The
longue et
crisis
elle
will be
sera
a long
dure.
one and it will be tough.
Nous allons devoir
We
tenir,
will have to hold strong,
assumer le
to pay
prix
the
de nos
price of our
décisions
decisions,
et
and
surtout
above
aller
all
plus
to go
loin dans
further
le
in
renforcement de
strengthening
notre union.
our union.
À Maïdan en
At the
2014,
Maidan
c'est
in
le drapeau
2014, it was the
européen que
European
les
flag
Ukrainiens
that was
brandissaient
flourished by
pour
the
réclamer la
Ukrainians
fin
to
de
call
la
for the
tutelle
end
de
of
Moscou.
Moscow's dominion.
Aujourd'hui, dans les abris
Today,
où ils se
in
réfugient contre
shelters
les
where
bombes,
they
on voit encore
seek shelter
des
from the
drapeaux
bombs, the
européens.
European flags can still be
C'est
seen.
vers nous que
We are the
l'Ukraine
ones
regarde.
the Ukrainians are
Nous
looking
devons
to.
prouver aux
We must
Ukrainiens
prove to the
qu'ils ont
Ukrainians
raison
that they are
de
right
croire
to
en
believe in us.
nous. Nous devons aimer l'Europe
We must love Europe
autant qu'ils l'aiment.
as much
Slava
as they
Ukraini.
love it. Slava Ukraini.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you much indeed.
Vizepräsidentin Heidi Hautala.
Vice President Heidi Hautala, please.
Arvoisa puheenjohtaja, Venäjän hyökkäys
President.
Ukrainaa vastaan on saanut EUn viimein
The
näyttämään
attack
sellaista
on
yhtenäisyyttä
Ukraine has
ja globaalia
finally
johtajuutta,
meant
jota siltä on kauan odotettu.
that we have
EU ja
shown
koko
our
demokraattinen
unity and that
maailma
we've
ovat
shown
onnistuneet
global
yhdistämään
leadership.
voimansa
That's what we've
Ukrainan
needed.
tueksi.
I think we've been able
presidentti
to
Sauli
show
Niinistö
that our
kuvasi
strength now
tuntemuksiaan
has been brought to bear to support
että
Ukraine.
naamiot on nyt pudotettu.
Sauli
Jäljellä
Niinistö,
ovat
the
vain sodan
Finnish
kylmät
president,
kasvot.
said that
Tilanne
the
on
masks now
täydellinen
have
herätys
fallen. All we see now is the
todellisuuteen,
face
vaikka
of
merkit
war.
Venäjän erittäin huolestuttavasta aggressiivisesta
What we see
kehityksestä
now
ovat olleet ilmassa
is
jo pitkään.
A very
Nyt jos koskaan on
difficult
rakennettava
development that we've seen
todellinen
happening
turvallisuus-
over
ja
many
puolustusyhteistyö
years.
Euroopan unionille, ja sen tulee kattaa kaikki EU-maat, ja sen tulee antaa suojaa
We'll need
myös
to
EU:n
therefore work as the
läheisille
EU,
kumppaneille.
as member
Hyvät
states,
ystävät, teille ei tarvitse kertoa, että
and help
Suomessa,
our neighbours.
sotilaallisesti liittoutumattomassa
We
maassa,
can't,
herätys
in
todellisuuteen
Finland,
on ollut
in a
vielä
non-aligned
jäätävämpi.
member state, we were frozen, if you will, but now we're actually seeing possible that we might be in the same situation. Countries that put themselves in Russia's way, this happens to them. So we would line out to look for NATO. Thank you much indeed, Ms. Bardella.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you.
President.
Negotiations were underway more than ever, but Vladimir Putin took an unacceptable step, putting Europe under the scourge of war. The sovereignty of a people and country was violated. So solidarity with the people of Ukraine, they've entered into a resistance to defend their homeland. But the tragic lessons of history must not cloud our vision. We need to look at the complexities as we seek peace and de-escalation. For 20 years now, we've been moving in a direction that has taken us under the American flag, and we have an imbalance in our relationship with Russia. Our own freedom to act has been sacrificed to an illusion and an archaic conflict. We need to be firm, and we need to be unambiguous in our unity and our support for the people of Ukraine and our condemnation of this invasion. It is nonetheless dishonest for the EU institutions to make use of this to take a vision of federalism forward that the people of Europe reject. NATO, an expansion of the EU, won't help in any way. The priority is to stop the arms. Russia should not come back to face the kind of sanctions which have not helped. Undermining the purchasing power of the people who are already suffering doesn't help with strategic autonomy, and the sanctions which have been in place since 2014 have been in this case. We should not carry on using methods which we condemn elsewhere in Europe. Mature democracies such as ours shouldn't be closing down media stations, even if they're under foreign influence. It is also no point of fanning the flames of war. We need to seek peace and de-escalation, and we also need to return to a free, independent, respected France, which is able to operate in a balance in a multipolar world.
Frau Kollegin Anna Fotyga.
Anna Fotyga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. I salute heroism and resistance of Ukrainian people facing the unprecedented aggression from the Kremlin, Putin's Russian Federation. I really admire heroism of Ukrainian leadership. President Zelensky already finds his place in universal history. I admire heroism of commanders, soldiers, and in particular, ordinary people. You are invincible. It is our war as well, and in resisting aggression, you are the best part of us, the West. We are honored by your request to become a member of the European Union. We'll do our utmost to provide you candidacy status as soon as possible and immediately on unprecedented rules, the membership, therefore, because we need you, and of course you need us. In this, I speak on behalf of entire ECR, Polish delegation. All of them fully support the resolution as negotiated by me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Pineda Mano.
Thank you, President. We condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. No nuances. Not 8 years since Donbass. We've seen impunity of the various assassinations by these gangs of Nazis. The Minsk agreements haven't been adhered to, but nothing can justify this attack. We're against war, and that's why we cannot support this resolution calling to arms, and which says that it's a guarantee of peace, and refers to an instrument of war, which is NATO. And the sanctions are against the civil population, well, never in the whole history of conflicts have sanctions helped anything. A fund to support peace cannot be used to buy weapons. We defend diplomacy, politics as the only way of resolving the conflict. We defend the sending of humanitarian aid and opening the borders for those refugees from that war. Our Secretary General, Julio Anguita, said, "May wars be damned and the swines that support them." Thank you. Kostas Papadakis is next, please.
Our condemnation of the capitalist aggression of Russia combines with the condemnation of the war crimes of the US, NATO and the European Union against the peoples of Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria and Libya. The imperialist competition for spheres and influence and the natural resources led to the capitalist war, which is paid with human lives and poverty. All this 30 years after the capitalist restoration of the Soviet Union, that socialism made it for people to live in equity for decades. Now, armaments are paid by the people, and this leads to escalation of the imperialist war, with the deep intervention of Greece through NATO bases. Peoples do not choose sides. No intervention, no involvement in the war, no armies outside national borders, decoupling from the EU and NATO. People in power.
Thank you. Andrius Kubilius, you have the floor.
Dear brothers and sisters in Ukraine, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to praise heroism of Ukrainian people. I would like to praise heroism of Ukrainian soldiers and the heroic leadership of President Vladimir Zelensky. Ukrainians are facing and defending themselves against the war launched by a real new Nazi regime in Kremlin. Putin is a real war criminal. Ukrainians are suffering because we in the West till now were too weak to stop Putin crimes from the very beginning. Ukrainians with their blood are fighting for their right to reunite with Europe. They are more Europeans than many of us. That is why we need to give them candidate status immediately, and then we need to design special fast procedure for Ukraine to join us. There is an example of such a special procedure when in 1990 Eastern Germany integrated into European Union, and it took less than 1 year. So let's establish a special procedure also for Ukraine's swift reunification with Europe. After EU started to deliver weapons to Ukraine, when SWIFT and other banking sanctions were introduced, we need next steps. First of all, we need to stop imports of Russian oil and gas immediately. Each day, we are paying to Putin for 100 new T-72 tanks, twice more than Ukrainians are able to destroy during one day on the battlefield. Second, let's create a multi-billion Free Ukraine Fund to support resilience, reconstruction and modernization of Ukrainian economy. Let's finance it in the same way as we finance Next Generation EU Fund with EU borrowing in the markets. Thanks, Josep Borrell, for a good idea. Third, let's introduce full-scale SWIFT and other sanctions also against criminal Lukashenko and his banks. And the last point, stable peace on the European continent will be possible only if deputinization of Russia will happen. With the help of Ukrainian victories on the battlefields, with our sanctions, and with the help of ordinary Russians protesting on the streets, The Putinization of Russia is coming closer and closer. Mr. Putin, you lost this criminal war. International Tribunal in Hague is waiting for you, for justice to be served. Justice, first of all, to Ukrainians. Razom do перемоги. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Herr Kubilius.
Thank you, Mr. Kubilius. Mr. Sven Mikser, please.
Colleagues, I am proud at how strong and united we are today, but we have to be honest. We have been painfully slow and painfully late waking up to the true nature of Putin's Russia. I hope that today we finally truly understand the urgency and the existential nature of the current situation. If we do, it is imperative that we support Ukraine in every way possible without holding anything back. This includes lethal defensive equipment, economic and humanitarian aid, help to the refugees, and yes, also launching an honest and accession process for Ukraine to join our union. Regarding sanctions on Russia, for as long as the criminal ideology of Putinism remains in power in Russia, we have to go beyond punishing individuals and take the strategic decision of systemically weakening Russia's economy and industrial base. This is in our vital security interest. Yes, sanctions hit ordinary Russians too, and they are not our enemies. But let's admit it, it is primarily the responsibility of the Russian people to make sure that their mad Tsar cannot kill innocent people abroad. We should fully expect, and when possible, encourage the Russian people to take that responsibility seriously. Slava Ukraini.
Ich bitte nun Herrn Malik Asman.
Next we have Malik Asman.
Thank you, President. The courageous Ukrainian people are standing up to an evil act of aggression. Europe answers Ukraine's call for help. We rise up to defend those who are fighting for freedom and democracy. The EU is showing unity, and we are finally showing that we are not just a soft power. We are crippling Russia's economy, isolating Putin's regime, and reinforcing Ukraine's defense. But this is just the start, and we have to do more by excluding more Russian operators and banks from SWIFT, by blocking the Russian Central Bank's use of Western currencies. And we should even consider blocking Russian ships in our harbors, and more. Also, we have to increase our support for Ukraine's economy and defense with money and weapons. My message to the Ukrainian people: Europe stands with you. Slava Ukraini.
Danke.
Thank you very much.
Monsieur Jadot Yannick.
Mr. Yannick Jadot, please.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, en ce moment même, dans les rues, dans les maisons, les Ukrainiens défendent héroïquement la liberté, ils défendent leur démocratie, ils défendent leur intégrité territoriale. Ils sont pour l'Europe entière le front pour la sécurité, pour la paix et pour la démocratie sur notre continent. Alors oui, sanctionnons massivement Poutine et les oligarques et intégrons immédiatement la Biélorussie dans ces sanctions. Oui, bien sûr, soutenons militairement la résistance en Ukraine. Oui, reconnaissons le statut de candidat à l'Ukraine pour l'Union européenne. Oui, mettons au banc la Russie de toute la communauté internationale et lançons un grand plan d'investissement pour la sécurité climatique et énergétique, pour faire des énergies renouvelables le cœur, parce que ce sont des énergies de paix, et pour sortir des dépendances énergétiques et des complaisances politiques qui tuent la démocratie et qui tuent le climat. Alors agissons maintenant, soyons fiers de l'Europe, aux côtés de la résistance héroïque de l'Ukraine. Slava Vilnius, Ukraine. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Urig, you have the floor.
Your
direction of the European Union colleagues, before I will say a couple of words about Ukraine, I would like to ask you a couple of honest questions. Where were international sanctions when the United States killed 200,000 civilians in Iraq under the pretext of weapons of mass destruction? Where were your resolutions when the US, completely against the international law, bombed Yugoslavia, Libya, or Syria? Where was Europe when Ukrainian mercenaries were killing children in Donbass or were burning civilians in Odessa? I hope that the actions of the last days are teaching us that all wars are bad. All wars are bad, not only the wars of the Russian Federation, but also the wars of the United States of America. We have to condemn all wars. What's happening in Ukraine is horrible, and it has to stop. It has to stop. But the hypocrisy of some of you colleagues who ignore wars only because they are American, that's also hypocrisy. It's terrible.
Next. Arnaud Danjean is the next speaker. Colleagues, the events we've seen affecting all of the rules in such a brutal fashion, against all rational thought. We've seen deliberate aggression, brutal aggression against a free, sovereign European nation. And Vladimir Putin is the only one to be blamed. By doing that, he underestimated what the Ukrainians could do. He underestimated how they felt about their independence. That's what all autocrats think. He underestimated the reactions from Europe. Ukrainian resistance is admirable, and it needs our 100% support. We're very happy that Europe has taken its responsibility, shouldered its responsibility, but this satisfaction, working in unity, that shouldn't affect our lucidity. This terrible war will last. The aggressor may actually win militarily, even though it has a lack of morality. Let's not forget either that given there is war in Europe, and we've had wars since 1945 in Europe, we've seen already that Europe believes that it's ready to deal with these wars. Since 1991, we saw a decade of terrible wars in the Balkans. Now we are moving to the Ukrainian theatre. It is protecting more than just its status as an independent state. It's trying to... We have to make sure that we maintain our strategic awakening. We have to deal with the situation that others are imposing on us. This is an existential threat. Thank you.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you much indeed. Next, Mr. Benifei.
Thank you, President. There is no greatness where there is no truth. These are the words of Leo Tolstoy, as quoted by David Sassoli a few months ago, addressing Putin. And we need the truth again today to achieve peace. The truth of the Ukrainian people who've shown heroic resistance together with President Zelensky. The truth of a Europe which is finally fighting for its own political energy and defence, sovereignty, and which is not afraid to speak out and to make sacrifices, to speak with one voice to stop war and save human lives, because victims come first, dead Ukrainians come first, the refugees we have to welcome, and those brave Russians who are sick of this military folly also come first. All people should be free, including Ukraine, to make their own decisions, make their own choices, without others trying to take decisions on their behalf. So we give full support today to the defence of our own democracy on Ukrainian soil. But we should be even braver than that. We should be there. Our governments, the EU institutions should take delegations to Kyiv to talk, to call for a ceasefire and to support the negotiations. Putin must stop. And then it will be all too clear to his own citizens too that both he and this inhuman war are mad. Long live free Ukraine. Long live free Europe.
Grazie. Grazie.
Thank you much. Di grazie. Mr. Getter, please.
Vous avez perdu, Monsieur Poutine. Oh, bien sûr, vous allez encore tuer, détruire, semer le deuil et le malheur, mais vous avez déjà perdu. Car on ne reconstruit pas les empires, croyez-en un Français, et ne revient pas à cet absolutisme dont vous rêvez tant, croyez-en toujours un Français. Vous avez perdu, Monsieur Poutine, car l'Ukraine résiste héroïquement, magnifiquement, et résistera jusqu'à sa juste victoire. Vous avez perdu car vous avez resserré comme jamais les rangs de notre Union qui prend ce jour même, ici même, les traits tant espérés d'une union politique. Vous avez perdu car vous avez rapproché les deux rives de l'Atlantique et vous avez perdu, Monsieur Poutine, parce que votre peuple ne vous croit plus et n'admet pas que vous alliez massacrer ses cousins ukrainiens. Vous n'êtes pas qu'un criminel de guerre, Monsieur Poutine. Vous êtes aussi une absolue nuisance pour votre pays lui-même que vous menez dans le mur contre son gré. Vive la paix, vive l'Ukraine, vive la liberté, Monsieur Poutine.
Yes. Thank you very much. Bevor wir die Aussprache fortsetzen,
before continuing the debate,
gebe ich nun die Ergebnisse
I'm
der
now going
ersten
to give the
Abstimmungsrunde
results of the first
des ersten
round of
Tages bekannt.
voting
Ich bitte den Herrn
from
Kollegen,
the
der der
day.
nächste Redner ist, um Verständnis
Please
dafür.
show
Die
the understanding
Ergebnisse
of
der
that to
ersten
the next speakers. So
Abstimmungsrunde
the results of
lauten
the
wie folgt.
voting round are as follows.
Abstimmung über die
On
Änderungsanträge
the
Russlands
amendments
Aggression
on
gegen
Russia's
die
aggression
Ukraine.
against Ukraine,
Absatz 1 angenommen.
paragraph 1 adopted,
Absatz 2
paragraph 2
angenommen.
adopted,
Absatz 3
paragraph 3
Änderungsantrag 4 abgelehnt.
amendment 4 rejected,
Absatz 3 angenommen.
paragraph
Änderung
3
5 angenommen.
accepted, amendment 5
Die Änderungen
accepted.
6, 22, 23 und 24 wurden abgelehnt.
22, 23, 24 rejected, amendment 7 adopted, 29 part 1 adopted, 29.2 rejected,
Änderungsanträge
amendment
29 Teil 3, Teil
29
1
part 3
wurden angenommen.
adopted,
Absatz 15 Teil
paragraph
1, Teil
15
2,
part 1
Teil
and part
3,
2 and part
Teil
3
4
and
wurden
part 4
angenommen.
adopted,
Der Änderungsantrag 8 wurde
amendment
angenommen.
8 adopted,
Zu Absatz 16
paragraph
sind
16
die Änderungsanträge Teil 1,
amendments
2,
part
3,
1,
4
2,
und
3,
5
4 and
hinfällig.
5 fall,
Absatz 17
paragraph
angenommen.
17 adopted,
Nach Absatz 17 sind
after
die Änderungsanträge
paragraph
13, 14,
17
15,
amendments 13,
16,
14, 15, 16,
13
17
und 14 angenommen. Die Änderungsanträge
adopted,
15, 16 und 17
15,
abgelehnt.
16 and 17
Absatz
rejected,
18
paragraph
Teil 1
18 part
und
1
Teil
part
2
2
angenommen.
adopted,
Absatz 19
paragraph
Änderungsantrag
19
9
amendment
abgelehnt.
9 rejected,
Absatz 19 Änderungsantrag
19
12 und
amendment
Änderungsantrag
12 and
25 angenommen.
1925 adopted,
Zu Absatz
on
19
paragraph
Teil
19
1,
parts
Teil
1,
2,
2,
Teil
3,
3, Teil
4,
4,
5
Teil
and
5
6
und Teil 6 sind die Änderungen hinfällig.
they fall,
Absatz 20 Teil
paragraph
1 angenommen.
20 part 1
Absatz
adopted,
20 Teil 2
paragraph
angenommen.
20 part 2 adopted,
Zu Absatz
21
21 sind die Änderungsanträge Teil
amendments
1, Teil
on
2,
part 1,
Teil
2,
3
3,
und Teil
4
4 angenommen.
adopted,
Zu Absatz 22 Teil
paragraph
1,
22
Teil 2
part 1 and
angenommen.
part 2 adopted,
Zu Absatz 23 Teil
on
1, Teil 2,
23,
Teil 3
1, 2 and
und
3 and
Änderungsantrag Teil
amendment
3 angenommen. Absatz 24
part
Änderungsantrag
3 also
11
adopted, on
angenommen.
24,
Zu
11
Absatz
is
24
adopted,
Teil
on
1
24
und Teil
part 1
2
and part 2
hinfällig.
they fall,
Absatz
25
25 angenommen.
adopted,
Absatz 27
27
angenommen.
adopted,
Zu Absatz 28 sind die
paragraph
Teile
28
1,
parts
2
1,
und
2,
3
3
angenommen.
adopted. Paragraph 29, parts 1 and 2, adopted. Paragraph 31, Amendment 26 is rejected. On 31, part 1 and part 2 are adopted. 34, Amendment 27, rejected. 34, part 1 and part 2, adopted. 35, parts 1, 2 and 3 adopted. Paragraph 36, Amendments 19 and 18 are rejected. After 37, Amendment 21 adopted. Paragraph 39 adopted. Paragraph 40, parts 1 and 2 adopted. After 43, Amendment 10 adopted. After paragraph 44, Amendment 20, rejected. After paragraph 45, Amendment 28 adopted. Recital C, part 1, 2, 3 and 4 adopted. After recital D, Amendment 1 rejected. Amendment 2 adopted. After E, Amendment 3 rejected. Recital F, part 1 and part 2 adopted. Recital G, parts 1 and 2 adopted. We shall now continue with our debate, and I'd like to ask our colleague Miroslav Radakovsky to come up to the lectern, please.
Also condemns the unjustified Russian invasion of Ukraine and calls for immediate stop of this aggression. Slovak Republic has offered the Russian and Ukrainian representatives of Bratislava for peace talks. Slovak Republic does not agree with the new independent countries. So Slovakia does not also prove the Kosovo status, because this was also with the help of foreign troops. I believe that in the near future there will be peace between two Slavic brothers, Ukraine and Russia, and we will do everything so that it will be this way. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to our colleague, Mr. Halicki.
Szanowni Państwo, zabite dzieci, kobiety, zniszczone miasta.
Children have been killed, women have been killed, towns have been destroyed. People there fighting for us, for freedom, for their freedom, but also for our values, European values, democracy. They're fighting for us, for Polish people, for Lithuanians, for you, ladies and gentlemen, in Western Europe, for all Europe to be able to enjoy security. They need weapons, that's obvious. But we can give them a lot more than weapons. We can give them a guarantee that once, thanks to those weapons, they've reconquered their freedom, they can live in peace in our family, in this European family. And that should be happening as soon as possible. Without looking at the procedure, we will find a way of implementing that dream. But let's be careful as well. Let's not make mistakes. If we want to suspend Nord Stream 2, why not suspend Nord Stream 1? We need to cut the head off Mr. Putin's mafia. We need to make sure they have no revenue. They should be there in The Hague International Tribunal for war crimes. And we should put our hand out today to everybody dreaming of peace. That's the sort of Europe we want. Europe living united and in peace. And anybody against that is working for Putin. Didn't start yesterday, this war in Ukraine. In 2008, let me just remind you, Russia attacked Georgia and Moldova, Transnistria. Blood was shed there as well. So we have to be supporting those in Russia who are fighting for peace. For Mr. Navalny. Long live free and democratic Ukraine.
Thank you. Mr. Jens Geier, you are the next one.
Vielen Dank, Herr Präsident. Thank you very much, President.
bin dankbar für diese
I'm
Sondersitzung,
grateful
weil
for
sie die
this special
Gelegenheit
sitting because
gibt, zum
it
Ausdruck
provides
zu
an
bringen, was die
opportunity to
politische Nachricht
express
dieses Tages sein muss.
what the
Wir
political
verdammen den
message of the day must
Völkerrechtsbruch,
be. We
den Präsident
condemn
Putin mit
the
seinem
breach of
Angriffsbefehl
international law
auf ein friedliches Nachbarland, die
committed
Ukraine,
by
begangen hat. Deswegen werden die
Putin ordering the
Abgeordneten
invasion
der
of a
SPD in
peaceful
diesem
neighboring
Parlament die
country.
eingebrachte
And
Resolution
that's the
umfänglich unterstützen.
resolution that we
Bundeskanzler Scholz
tabled
hat
as
recht,
yesterday
das ist
and we
Putins
emphatically
Krieg.
support
Ihm
it.
und seiner
Scholz
Regierung gilt
is
unser
right, this is
Widerstand und unser
Putin's
Protest,
war,
nicht dem
and
russischen
we are
Volk.
protesting against
Unsere
him,
Gedanken
not the
sind heute
Russian
bei den
people.
Menschen in der
Our thoughts are
Ukraine, bei
with those
denen,
people in
die um
Ukraine
ihre Freiheit
now
kämpfen, die
who
dabei
are
ums
fighting
Leben
for their
kommen
freedom,
und die
who are
flüchten,
losing
um
their
ihr Leben
lives
zu retten.
and who are
Slava
fleeing to
Ukraini.
save their lives. Slava
Die EU
Ukraini.
und ihre
The
Institutionen
EU and its
haben in dieser
institutions
Gelegenheit
in
bewiesen,
this
dass sie ihrer Aufgabe gerecht werden
opportunity have
können
shown that they can
und eine nie
rise to the
gesehene
occasion,
Entschlossenheit und
and there
Handlungsfähigkeit
is
an den
an
Tag gelegt. Die
unprecedented
gemeinsame
resolve
Außenpolitik
that they
der EU,
have
sie funktioniert
demonstrated.
also,
The
wenn die
EU foreign
Mitgliedstaaten es
policy
nur
therefore
wollen. Die
works
Sanktionen
only
treffen
when
hart.
member states want
Viele
it. The
europäische
sanctions are hitting
PolitikerInnen
hard.
haben
Many
Putin
European
gewarnt, wie kostspielig ein Angriff auf
politicians
die Ukraine
warned
sein wird.
Putin
Das
about how
bewahrheitet
costly
sich
an
jetzt.
attack on
Die
Ukraine would
humanitäre
prove,
Hilfe für die
and that
Geflüchteten
is
läuft
being
an.
borne
Unsere
out now.
Solidarität
Support for the
gilt den
refugees is
Mitgliedstaaten an der
continuing,
Westgrenze
and we are
der
showing
Ukraine,
solidarity
die
with
jetzt
countries
ihre
on the
erste Hilfe
western
leisten.
border
Ihr
of
seid nicht
Ukraine who
allein.
are providing
Über alle
the
Hilfe
first
für die
assistance.
Ukraine
They
und
are
für die
not standing
europäischen
alone.
Nachbarstaaten müssen wir aber jetzt auch unsere
Our help for
Politiken
Ukraine and
weiterentwickeln.
neighbouring countries
Wie
require
stellen
us
wir
to
uns
develop our
Sicherheit in einer
policies further.
multipolaren Welt
How do we
vor?
create
Diese Frage
security in a
hat uns Putin
multipolar
in aller
world?
Brutalität
That
gestellt.
question
Wir
is
werden
one asked
Antworten
of
finden.
us brutally by President Putin. We must find an answer.
Danke, Herr Kollege.
Thank you, colleague.
Am Wort ist Frau
And the
Hilde
next
Wautmans.
speaker is Mrs. Hilde Falkmans.
Meneer de hoge vertegenwoordiger,
High
collega's,
Representative, colleagues,
Putin heeft het tegenovergestelde gekregen van wat hij wou.
Putin has got what he wanted. More NATO, more European unity, more Western determination. And he really wants a dirty war, Putin, against the West, and now he's threatening with nuclear weapons. Everything is irrational. He's a warmonger. But let us not forget, colleagues, autocrats throughout the world are looking at what's happening, how we are going to protect our values, how they're looking at our reaction today, and that will decide which world we live in tomorrow. 24th of February, the world changed. Let's make sure that in this crisis we see a new Europe born, a strong European defence, a strong European army to defend our values, where we work together, we have a common asylum policy to be able to deal with the refugees from Ukraine. A Europe that is no longer dependent on Russia for the supply of its fuel. A Europe with European Solidarity Fund for all Europeans who are affected by Putin's war. That is the Europe that we need now. Long live freedom, long live Europe, Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Frau Kollegin.
Thank
Das
you.
Wort hat nun der
And
Vorsitzende des
the next speaker is
Außenpolitischen
the
Ausschusses
chairman of
unseres
the
Hauses,
Foreign
David
Policy
McAllister.
Committee of this Parliament, Mr. David McAllister.
Mr. President, thank you. The Russian military aggression and invasion against Ukraine is illegal, it is unprovoked, it is unjustified. This is indeed a crucial and historical moment, the moment of truth, as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen pointed out. Too many times in the past, the international community has been blind in front of unfolding tragedies. Today, we as a European Parliament are sending a strong and a united message to the Kremlin that we stand with Ukraine in full solidarity. As chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I would like to thank the colleagues from the different political groups who drafted and negotiated this resolution, and I call on colleagues to vote in favour. I fully underline the very good arguments we have heard today. I want to add one point. Let us also strongly condemn the involvement of Belarus in this aggression against Ukraine. It was during last week's interparliamentary conference on the CFSP and CSDP in Paris that Svetlana Tsikhanouska made it very clear that the assault on Ukraine wouldn't have been possible if dictator Lukashenko wouldn't have had provided Russia the land and the infrastructure. The Lukashenko regime has assisted and enabled this Russian aggression. For this reason, the EU should apply further appropriate sanctions also on Belarus. Dear colleagues, the world will hold Russia and Belarus accountable for their actions. Thank you.
Danke, Herr Kollege.
Thank you.
Nun Frau
And
Kathleen
now
van Bremt
Mrs. Kathleen
das
van
Wort.
Bremt has the floor.
Dankeschön. Dear colleagues, today we feel sadness, anger for sure, but also pride. Pride in the unity of the European response to Putin's war crimes. Could you imagine just for 1 second that we did not have the European Union today? Then we would be divided, and divided we cannot have any response to Putin. But united as we stand today, we have Ukraine's back. Mr. Zelensky, I know you have other things to do, but you know we have your back. We stand with you, we stand with your people in full solidarity in fight for peace, freedom and democracy. And it is clear Putin will only listen to clear messages. So we need to use this clear language. So therefore, I think it's important that we stop buying gas from Russia. We need to cut up from that gas. It's at a high price, but it is doable. And if we do not pay the price today, we will be presented with the price tomorrow. And President Zelensky was right. He said, this is the crisis of freedom and democracy. Well, dear colleagues in Europe, let's take this fight and stand up for our values. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame. Herr Kollege
Thank you,
Ilan
Mr.
Kyuchuk.
Ilan Kyuchuk.
Thank you, dear President. Dear colleagues, we have a war in Europe on a scale and of a type we thought belong to the history books. And let me be clear, this is not the war of Russian people. This is the Putin's war. Putin's regime is the one to blame for waging the war, killing civilians, destroying country's infrastructure. Putin has attacked democratic values and European aspirations of the people of Ukraine. But the brave Ukrainians stood up strong, and they deserve fully fledged support. Colleagues, it's time to be on the right side of history and to grant Ukraine with candidate status. Dear Ukrainians, we will not let you go. I'm sure that the white will win over the dark. We are with you, the brave people of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Herr Muresan.
Thank you, Mr. Muresan.
Sie sind unser nächster Redner.
You are our next speaker.
Vielen Dank, Herr Präsident. Dear colleagues, now is the time for actions and clear words, so I will say 4 things very clearly. We can only live in safety and security within the borders of the 27 member states of the Union if we are surrounded by countries which are safe and stable in our neighborhood. This is why defending Ukraine means defending the European Union. We have to provide all support that we can to Ukraine, including financial support, and here we, the European Parliament, have a big role to play. We say very clearly we are ready to spend EU money to support Ukraine and to rebuild Ukraine. We are ready to spend EU money for defense. We are ready to spend more for democracy in Ukraine and everywhere else where needed as well. Secondly, when people in Ukraine say they want to join the European Union, our answer is yes, you are welcome. Ukraine belongs to Europe. Ukraine belongs to the European Union. This today we say with the very large majority of pro-European members of the European Parliament. We know there is still a lot to do until membership, many difficulties to overcome. But what proof do we need more than what the people of Ukraine are doing these days as a proof that the people of Ukraine can overcome all difficulties in view of becoming member of the European Union one day? We start work on this as soon as possible. Thirdly,
the Republic of Moldova, a country of less than 3 million people, a neighboring country of the European Union, has welcomed more than 70,000 refugees on their territory in the past 5 days. They provided food, they provided shelter, they provided support, they acted in European spirit on the basis of European values because they are led by a pro-European president and a pro-European government. This is why I say everything that we offer to Ukraine, we have to offer to the Republic of Moldova right now in terms of EU cooperation, in terms of perspective for membership. The Republic of Moldova and Ukraine are equally important for the security of Europe. And last thing, the invasion of Ukraine and the assault upon Kiev would not have been possible without Belarus. This is why all political measures that we apply upon Russia, we should apply in the same manner upon Belarus. Thank you very much.
Danke vielmals. Zu Wort gemeldet hat sich Herr Robert Biedron.
Mr. Robert Biedron.
Wojna wróciła do Europy. To wojna między dwoma światami, agresywnym i autorytarnym światem Putina, a drugim, gdzie chcemy pokoju i demokracji.
Authoritarian world and our world, where we want peace and democracy.
A ukraińskie dzieci, mężczyźni i
kobiety
bohaterami.
It's a war perpetrated by Putin, and the heroes of the war are the Ukrainians, men and women. It's not just about aggression against Ukraine, it's aggression against the whole of Europe, all of our dreams of peace and our peaceful ambitions. That's why today we should remember that Europe will never be at peace until Ukraine is at peace. Ukraine is part of Europe. It's a moment of hope for millions of Ukrainians who are placing that hope in the EU. We should be opening our doors wide for Ukraine before Putin closes his on them forever. I would ask every member here, every lover of democracy, to show their support for Ukraine. They're fighting for their freedom, ours and theirs. Slava Ukraini.
Zu Wort gemeldet hat sich Herr Czolosz Dacian.
Mr. Dacian Czolosz has the floor.
Cetățenii ucraineni au curaj să țină piept uneia dintre cele mai mari armate din lume și reușesc acest lucru. Au curajul să lupte, dar să nu renunțe la valorile libertății, care sunt și valorile Uniunii Europene. Este o lecție pentru orice regim tiranic și criminal care vrea să năbușe în sânge și sub bombardamente aspirațiile și valorile europene, democrația și alegerea viitorului în libertate. Dragi colegi, această lecție a cetățenilor ucraineni
for the citizens of Ukraine is also a lesson for us, those who have taken hold of freedom and peace in recent decades. Our lesson is that we must have the determination and courage to open today the path to our union to all those Europeans who want to join in this project and believe in it. And fear not, just as they are standing up to a great army today, so they will have the strength to rebuild their country after this disaster. Ukrainians deserve the EU opening the door wide for them. The same applies to Moldovans and Georgians. The Commission has taken courageous, historic steps in recent days, and this should continue. United, we are a great power, and this can also be seen through the help given by the citizens of Romania, Poland, Hungary, and Moldova and Slovakia to the refugees from the war. The countries that have opened their borders for refugees urgently need our support, and that must come. Slava Ukraina.
Und das Wort hat unser früherer Präsident und jetziger Vorsitzender des Verfassungsausschusses Antonio Tajani.
Previous President and current Chairman of the Constitutional Affairs Committee, Antonio Tajani.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are all Ukrainians. Tutta l'Europa, tutto l'Occidente.
The whole of Europe, the whole of the West. We're on the side of freedom and democracy. We will continue standing up against Russian aggressors and stand up with the strength of our own values. The cohesion and the resistance that we've seen from the Ukrainian people and the strong role of Europe has forced Russia to sit at the negotiating table. We all want peace. Let us hope that the negotiations will lead to attaining fundamental aims such as peace. But peace cannot mean colonization of a free country. Many citizens of Ukraine are fleeing war, and we need humanitarian corridors with a refugee reception plan. We also need to take account of the events of the last few days and respond by having a true foreign policy and a true common defence policy. We need Europe to be even stronger in order to defend our values. We also need energy self-sufficiency. We need a single market for energy. If we're really to avoid being held hostage by any third party. And we also need solidarity. We need to help families and businesses. They've been mobilizing enthusiastically in favor of sanctions and willing to pay that price. But we need to ensure that we're helping those brave business people and families. We need to help them over the next few months and years, because it is true that freedom and democracy do come at a price. The price of our commitment. But our commitment has no price. We need to help those who have fought with such determination. Thank you.
Ich erteile nun Frau Helene Fritzon.
Helene Fritzon.
Tack, herr talman, kommissionen, höga representanten. Ja, det är krig i Europa. Bomber faller, civila mördas, bostäder blir ruiner och barnen gråter.
Civilians are dying, children are crying, houses are collapsing. Putin's invasion can only be described as an invasion in cold blood without any regard for human suffering. The EU is more united than ever, and we are adopting the harshest sanctions in the history of the EU. President Zelensky, people of Ukraine must understand that the EU stands with them. We show solidarity. Putin will see that there is powerful, tangible action to stand up to him. The EU is speaking with one voice, once and for all, and this aggression against Ukraine must cease immediately. We must immediately step up to defend Ukraine and to defend the EU. The Swedish flag has the same beautiful colours as the flag of Ukraine, and we stand with the people of Ukraine.
Mulțumesc, doamna președintă.
Thank you, Madam President.
Cu toții am văzut cum o agresiune nejustificată și neprovocată a Federației Ruse în Ucraina a produs o catastrofă umanitară de proporții. Astăzi, când vă vorbesc, mii și zeci de mii de femei, copii, persoane în vârstă, încearcă să se salveze, iar punctele de trecere a frontierei sunt aglomerate cu acești oameni, aceste persoane care au dreptul la o viață civilizată și au dreptul să supraviețuiască. Românii s-au mobilizat, guvern, autorități locale și mii și mii de cetățeni individuali care vin în secretă ce pot ei, mâncare, un adăpost. Situația este tragică. A fost ieri doamna comisar Johansson și a văzut ce înseamnă o condiție absolut deplorabilă pe care au trebuit să o îndure acești oameni nevoiți să-și părăsească casele. Și vă dați
problems are experienced by these people who've lost their homes. For example, a woman who crossed the border with a small child in their hands, pregnant, and had to leave their husband home in their country. And that's what we're facing. And Ukraine, Moldova should be candidate countries. These people deserve respect and our support.
Thank you, Mr. Nika. I give the floor next to Ms. Tanja Fajon for 1 minute. Hvala. Spoštovani, nisem si predstavljala, da bom kadarkoli na tem odru pozivala ustavite vojno v Ukrajini. Ustaviti je treba glasnike vojne, zatiralce svobode, pravne države, demokracije, človekovih pravic, nacionalistični avtokrati tudi v Evropi bodo rušili demokracijo, dokler jih ne bomo ustavili.
And Russia's conduct is threatening the post-war arrangements and security of the entire Europe, also exploiting the war in Ukraine for political purposes and profit is a disgrace. Only unity and the swift response of Western democracies is giving us hope. We Slovenians still carry a vivid and painful memory of the bloody Balkan Wars, and we want peace. Therefore, there will be a large rally in Slovenia today for peace. We have to help those affected by war. I thank everybody who is selflessly collecting and distributing aid to the refugees and to all people in distress. Not only today, but always. Every war ends at a negotiating table. It's absurd that, therefore, bloodbath, destruction and suffering ever happen in the first place. We should do everything in our power that peace is achieved through the power of international law and words and not due to the argument of force.
I give the floor next to Nils Ujakovs for 1 minute.
Distinguished Madam President, dear colleagues, I will speak Latvian today, but being myself an ethnic Russian, I would like to try to address Russians in Russia and in Europe as well. Šobrīd, kad Kremlis izteno zemīsku un noziedzīgu karu pret Ukrainu, daudziem sākam ir kauns būt Krievam. Tā tas nav. Krievija tiek aizturēta tūkstošiem cilvēku, kas bezbailīgi piedalās protestācijās, pilsētu protestē pret karu.
But Russians are protesting. And in Europe, there are a lot of protests as well. And a lot of Russian speakers in Europe, they are taking part in these protests as well. Being Russian isn't a shame. But But it's difficult to justify what's happening in Kharkiv. We need to do more in Europe. We need to give the EU the chance to become an EU member as quickly as possible. And now in Russian.
Pilsoņi un rezidenti, ka jūs esat musē. Mēs esam pret Kremli, mēs neesam pret Krievu cilvēkiem.
We are against the Kremlin, but we're not against the Russian people.
Thank you, Mr.
And it's important for us to say no to this criminal war in Ukraine.
Important debate for this House. I invite, on behalf of the Commission, Vice President Šefčovič to take the floor.
Madam President, Honourable High Representative, my dear colleague, Commissioner McGuinness, honourable members of the European Parliament, but first and foremost, dear Ukrainians, Szanowni Ukraińcy. I have to say that I never seen a debate in European Parliament charged with so much emotions, solidarity and a sense of common European belonging. As you know, we come from different countries, from different political families, but we are discussing today an attack against the most fundamental European values that we all share. And therefore, today, we are all Ukrainians. Сьогодні ми всі українці. Because the people of Ukraine are fighting for our values. They are fighting for our freedom, and they are fighting for everything we believe in. For Europe as we know it, for Europe as we treasure it.
And we will need the same unity as we felt this afternoon in this House in the days, weeks and months ahead. It's clear that Kremlin has failed in its goal to crush Ukraine. It failed to break spirit of brave Ukrainians. It failed to divide or scare Europe. On the contrary, bravery and courage of all Ukrainians and calm and determined leadership of President Zelensky and his government energize not only Ukraine and Ukrainians, but the whole Europe, all democracies, and I believe every peace-loving human being in the world. Mr. President Zelensky, we have been working together to reform Ukraine. We have been working together on energy security, on energy independence. And we will be working together to build strong, democratic Ukraine. Mr. President, you ask us to do proof that we are with you. And I would like to respond to you, we are. We will make sure that the sanctions are vigorously applied, and not only on Russia, but also on Belarus. We will do our utmost to supply you with everything you need. And we will be with you to rebuild your beautiful country after your victory. Nobody in Europe can doubt today that the people that stand up so bravely for our European values belongs in our European family. And therefore, I want to reassure you that as we welcome your women and children in Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and other European countries, that in the same warm, receptive way, we will open our arms to Ukraine in our common house of peace, democracy and prosperity called Europe. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Vice President Šefčovič. And now, on behalf of the Council, I invite High Representative Borrell to take the floor.
Señora Presidenta, querido colega comisario, señoras y señores diputados.
President, Commissioner, members.
Rusia se sitúa después de la agresión a Ucrania
Following this aggression
en un punto de inflexión
in
de su
Ukraine,
etapa postsoviética.
Russia is reaching a crucial juncture in its post-Soviet existence.
Rusia ha puesto fin a
Russia
uno de los últimos
has
eslabones que quedaban en
come
su
to the
relación
end
con la Unión Europea.
of an era in its relations
Ese
with the
eslabón
EU.
eran los acuerdos de Minsk.
The Minsk
El presidente
agreements
Putin los ha liquidado.
are now a thing of the
Eran
past.
acuerdos imperfectos.
Putin has done away with them.
Desde
They
muchos puntos de
were
vista,
not perfect.
arrancados en un momento en el que
They
había que
arose
hacer
at
un
a
alto
point
el fuego
in
anterior.
time when we needed a ceasefire in a
No
previous
obstante,
conflict.
estos acuerdos
Nonetheless,
consagraban
those
la integridad
agreements
territorial de Ucrania.
guaranteed Ukrainian territorial integrity,
Hoy ya imposible, marcaba
and
un
respect
hipotético camino
for those agreements, which is
hacia
now
una
inconceivable,
normalidad de
was
las
something that
relaciones
led us on a path towards a normalization of diplomatic relations between Russia and the EU.
Y esta referencia y esta posibilidad ahora ha desaparecido.
That is now inconceivable.
Por eso digo que Rusia se encuentra hoy en un punto de
And this is why
inflexión
I'm
en su
saying
trayectoria
that Russia has now reached a turning point in terms of its post-Soviet
tremendo
existence.
conflicto
This
solo puede concluir
awful
positivamente con un
conflict
regreso de Rusia
can
a las
only
normas y a los
lead
principios
to a positive
internacionales
outcome of a
básicos.
return of Russia to the fold of respect for fundamental principles. This is the opportunity which we have in the EU. We need to seize this opportunity to put forward mechanisms and treaties that will ensure that there are mechanisms in place for ensuring security, stronger mechanisms in place that will allow us to be very vigilant about their implementation. In the enthusiasm of a parliamentary session, one can forget that the path of dialogue, the path of speaking and listening to one another, is at the heart of what we do in Europe. We should not forget that. We are not a military body. We're not declaring war on anyone. We've actually turned our back on war as a solution, as a way to resolve conflict. What we're doing is standing alongside a victim of an aggression, and we are mobilizing all of our diplomatic resources in order to ensure that we can safeguard the security of Europe, but also in order to find a solution to the conflict. Because there are necessary and inevitable sanctions, yes, but above and beyond that, we need solutions. Sanctions will hit, and are indeed already hitting, the Russian economy. And Putin cannot claim ignorance of that. He had warnings. President von der Leyen, the President of Council, have said on numerous occasions that sanctions will impose a very high price, and that is now going to happen. The ruble has lost 40% of its value. Almost half of the currency reserves of Russia will be beyond reach, with a significant impact on the economy. There's a threat of default. So taking a few banks out of SWIFT is child's play compared to this, because if you look at the figures, Russia had been preparing for some time to face a situation such as this, and it had been moving its dollar and euro reserves out into yuan, renminbi, and gold. So they're moving out of dollars and euros, less than 40% of their total reserves now. But 40% is still significant. 135 million in gold. But even if it's billions in gold, who's going to buy it? In order to sell it, you need a buyer. Sanctions are going to prevent the mobilization of these resources. So these financial measures are certainly unprecedented.
Financial measures will go in the direction of a potential default, which will have consequences for the whole financial system, for the global financial system. So don't minusvalorate the importance of what we have decided to do and what will follow. I want to stress that. And now we have to work diplomatically all over the world, reaching out all countries in order to build a state of the mind in order the aggressor being condemned. And on that, I can assure you, me as High Representative, all my colleagues, members of the Foreign Affairs Council, all our delegations, all our embassies will be strongly working in order to get a result on the vote in the General Assembly. This is the most important thing that we have to do right now. Because I repeat, this is an issue which belongs to the foreign and security policy, which is intergovernmental, and it's the member states who have to take the lead on this response and the diplomatic sphere. The second thing that has been discussing today, and is maybe the more important that many of us could believe, is our dependency from the gas. The President has been saying all the time, we have to reduce this dependency. But I've been listening for the last 20 years that we have to decrease this dependency, and this dependency has been increasing during the last 20 years. So from now on, let's work in accordance with our saying, because we pay $700 million for the world for gas and oil and coal imports from Russia. And every year we import 200 billion cubic meters of gas. We have to increase renewables, President said, have renewed hydrogen, but keep in mind that the amount of power in a country like Italy a year in renewables is less than 500 million of cubic meters. So we have in front of us a strong work to do. And we have to remain committed to it. And we have to explain to our people what does it mean. This is a good occasion to develop the best and most noble side of the political activity, which is pedagogy. That's the moment to do pedagogy. And I understand the enthusiasm and the approach of a parliamentarian chamber in a moment like this. I've been parliamentarian as you many years, even president of this House. And I know that this is the moment to show enthusiasm and support. But then we have to go to act. And next time, when you discuss again the budget of the European Union, remember that we need resources for do what today we are doing with an intergovernmental fund that this Parliament has never approved, because it's not in your competences. Put more defense and security on your mindset. Stop discussing theology about strategic autonomy. Call it the way you want, but we have to be more responsible. We have to take our responsibility more in our hands. We have to be strategically responsible. And this has nothing to do against weakening the transatlantic alliances, which, by the way, have been proven to be stronger than ever. And our unity with the transatlantic partners has been 100%. Nothing against weakening NATO, because we develop our capacities. We have to become a hard power. I know that the words may afraid someone, but hard power, I insist, is not just talking about military. Hard power is having a power to coerce, the power to influence the decisions of the others. And what we are doing on these measures is a lot of hard power. Be prepared for the answer. Be prepared for the consequences. Don't put all your strength in your mouth. Don't say nice things only. From now on, we have to be prepared to resist. We have to be prepared to act in the long term with a clear understanding of which are our challenges and our capacities. This is the moment for the European Union to discuss about what do we want to be, what we are, which are the limits of what we can do, and what do we want to do in the future. And in order to face the challenge of the future, there is a lot of things that we have to review, a lot of things about our procedures, our methods, putting more attention on our capacity to act than in the time that we spend on internal discussions. What's happening today in Ukraine, remember me, Budapest in '56. I was 9 years old, but I remember listening to the radio how the Russian chars were entering in Budapest. Would remember me, '88, the Prague Spring. I was an officer in the Spanish army then, and my unit was put into alert. I don't know why, because it was completely useless. On both cases, we did nothing, because we couldn't do anything. But from now on, we have to face a confrontation between us, democracies, people who believe on freedom, on multi-party system, where citizens choose their governments. When we live in a free market economy, trying to put together economic efficiency and social cohesion with the autocratic regimes, which are supporting themselves with a clique of people who take advantage of the system, while the great majority of the people don't improve their living conditions. all the war treasury that Putin is taking from our gas payments doesn't go to increase the well-being of the Russian people. It goes to make more powerful his war machine. Tout l'argent qu'on paye pour le gaz et le pétrole russe.
Everything which is being spent on Russian gas and other goods are not helping the people of Russia. That's just going into military expenditure by Russia. And I think very honestly that the time has come for Europe to think of itself. What do we actually want for the future? What do we want to be in the future? And I think we want to be something more than what we are now. That is the true challenge which we will have to face over the next few weeks, months and years, and that is why the Conference on the Future of Europe can play a very important role. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, High Representative. That concludes the debate. The vote is already open and will be open until 4:15, and I now invite all the colleagues. There are as many people in the Esplanade waiting for us to address them. Looking forward to that. Thank you very much.